My son, that every once in a while makes a cameo on the show, Gray, has about 5 things he will eat in his whole life in his rotation.
Okay.
A vegetable is not in there. He'll eat fruit, but vegetables he will not touch. Grilled cheese, turkey sandwich, corn dogs, every once in a while chicken tender, and that's about it. Maybe 4 things. Donuts.
Let me set the scene for you. You've been at work all day, you get home, and you actually manage to roast some broccoli in the oven or pop some frozen broccoli in the microwave. That means you're basically like a super parent. But then your adorable toddler picks it up, looks you right in the eye, and hurls it across the room. So you think to yourself, he hates broccoli. I'm not doing that again. Actually, the research says do try it again. It can take 10 or more tries for a kid to accept a new food, so parents don't give up. NPR's Life Kit has more creative tips for getting your kid to eat those veggies. Here's Beck Harlan.
One way to increase the appeal of veggies for your kids, something called flavor conditioning. That's when you pair the new food, say carrots or broccoli, with a flavor that you know your child already enjoys. For example,
you can roast carrots maybe with a little bit of honey. Or my kids love tomato sauce, so sometimes I'll give them tomato sauce to dip broccoli into.
That's Juliana Cohen. She does research on kids and nutrition, and she teaches at Harvard. She also suggests serving veggies as a little appetizer before a meal. Take one study from the science journal Appetite. While kids were standing in line for school lunch, they were offered a serving of peppers.
And in fact, it shows that, not surprisingly, kids end up eating more fruits and vegetables when it's offered that way.
Something else to try, and this takes a little extra time, I know, but involve kids in the selection and preparation of foods. That can actually increase the likelihood of them trying a food. Here's Kelsey Lloyd. She's a clinical pediatric dietitian based in Washington, D.C.
Maybe you go to the grocery store together and you pick out a new vegetable together and then figure out how to make it.
Try something like, hey, do you think we should sprinkle cheese on this next time? Find age-appropriate ways to bring kids into the process. Another tip, Cohen says there's some research behind giving food fun names. For example, calling carrots X-ray vision carrots. Cohen says you should play with your food.
I'll design it into like funny shapes for them. I'll make like a little, dinosaur out of vegetables or something like that, and the broccoli or the trees.
Cohen also says it's helpful for kids to see adults enjoying veggies. So after you take a bite, say something like, wow, I really love how crunchy this is. We want to create a positive association with vegetables. So as tempting as it is to withhold a brownie until the broccoli is gone or force a clean plate before they can get up and play, Cohen and Lloyd both say, be careful with that. Here's Kelsey Lloyd again.
In the long run, can be a little detrimental in terms of how we view food and what it means to eat a vegetable or what it means to have a dessert. Oftentimes that can create a negative association with different vegetables.
Cohen says it's important to remember that kids' tastes change as they grow, and to remind the kids of that too.
I know your 7-year-old taste buds didn't like that food, but you're 8 now. You have different 8-year-old taste buds that might like these new foods.
Even for a dietitian like Lloyd, it took her some time to come around to veggies.
I know a lot of kids, like myself included, really didn't start eating vegetables until maybe like early middle school. It's a long process, and I think oftentimes we get caught up in like the day-to-day minutia when really it's a lifetime piece of work. So that's my main thing is, parents don't have to beat themselves up if kids don't like peas on the first try.
Beck Harlan, NPR News.
Saying if it was not for the white people who practice racism, white supremacy, Mr. President Obama would not be in the White House?
If any black person who forgets that is forgetting a very important fundamental. He couldn't even been running. His name would have not been known. He wouldn't have had a white mother in Kansas.
Sometimes the little places you pass every day hold much more significance than you realize. In this month's Hidden Kansas, Becky Tanner takes us to one such spot.
On a blink and you miss it spot along Highway 50 in Stafford County, there's a cemetery that marks a pioneering past most Kansans may not know about. The Martin Cemetery is an all-black cemetery that's listed on the National Register of Historic Places. It contains the graves of about 20 exodusters who arrived in Kansas roughly 150 years ago.
I found out that I had relatives buried in St. John 2 years ago, which I was actually really surprised because I had no idea.
That's Lamont Bowen of Wichita, who's been researching his family history.
From what I've read about it, some of them were prior slaves in the South, and during the Emancipation Proclamation, they were freed.
Indeed, some of Bowen's ancestors were members of a mass migration referred to as exodusters, a term derived from the Bible's recounting of the exodus of Israelites from Egypt. It began in the mid to late 1870s as support for Reconstruction following the Civil War waned. African Americans, many of them farmers, left the Deep South to find better lives on the western frontier. Thousands came to Kansas. Between 35 and 40 exoduster families settled on the sandy soils of Stafford County. But why here?
Possibly it's fertile land, number one, and then it's kind of secluded out there in a prairie, like in the middle of nowhere. And maybe that's what they were looking for, is some seclusion, and, especially coming out of slavery.
All told, between 15,000 and 20,000 exodusters flocked to Kansas. They were urged on in part by St. John's namesake, John P. St. John, Kansas's 8th governor. Bowen's family settled across the highway from where the cemetery is located. 2 years ago, Bowen returned there.
It was a deep, heartfelt feeling, especially knowing the history, some of the things that happened there. I can only assume things were so rough for them that it probably wasn't safe. From what I understand, there was a Klan rally there at some point. So I'm sure there was issues there in terms of them being afraid, protecting their family, their kids, their livestock. So that would be, in my opinion, one of the reasons why they moved away.
The cemetery is just feet from the highway, where the only sounds are the swish of cars and semi-trucks passing by, never stopping to understand the legacy that lies nearby. For The Range, I'm Becky Tanner.
Ain't no grave can hold my body down.
I ever tell you about the first time I leave the state of Georgia?
When was that?
A few minutes back.
Go on.
Yes. Now, my daughter, she's married to a Pullman porter, She's always on the go. New York, Detroit, St. Louis. I said, well, now that's all well and good, Tommy Lee, but I just don't feel the need for it. So here it is. First time. And I might tell you, Miss Daisy, Alabama ain't looking like much so far.
This is an unlawful assembly. You're to disperse. You're ordered to disperse, go home, or go to your church. This march will not continue.
There is no cause for pride in what has happened in Selma. There is no cause for self-satisfaction in the long denial of equal rights of millions of Americans. But there is cause for hope and for faith in our democracy and what is happening here tonight.
One of the reasons I came here today is to say to the families and those who remember Jimmy Lee Jackson, Reverend James Reeb, Viola Liuzzo, and others whose names we may never know, we honor them for the patriots they were.
Back then they were called communists or half-breeds or outside agitators sexual and moral degenerates, and worse. They were called everything but the name their parents gave them. Their faith was questioned. Their lives were threatened. Their patriotism challenged. And yet, what could be more American than what happened in this place?
No matter how hard some people try, we can't just choose to learn what we want to know and not what we should know. We should learn everything, the good, the bad, the truth of who we are as a nation. And everyone should know the truth of Selma. 600 believers put faith in action to march across that bridge named after the Grand Dragon of the KKK. They're on their way to the state capital of Montgomery to claim their fundamental right to vote, laid in the bedrock of our Constitution, but stolen by hate, harbored in too many hearts.
And Closer Look continues from WABE in Atlanta. I'm Rose Scott. Tomorrow, March 7th, marks 60 years to the day when hundreds wanted to participate in a peaceful march from Selma, Alabama to the state capitol in Montgomery. The march was to protest the denial of voting rights for black people and also the killing of another activist, 26-year-old Jimmy Lee Jackson. He was shot by an Alabama state trooper, James Bonard Fowler, during another protest that occurred on February 18th, 1965 in Marion, Alabama. Jimmy Lee Jackson would die 8 days later. And a month before his killing, then Alabama Governor George C. Wallace, a staunch segregationist, appeared on the National Public Affairs program Citizens Council Forum. Here, Wallace is being interviewed by Dick Morphy.
Governor Wallace, it's interesting to note that the cry of police brutality is raised whenever Southern law enforcement authorities take any action to curb some of the excesses of these demonstrations. And yet virtually the same tactics are used by police in Washington, D.C. in forcibly removing demonstrators demonstrating supposedly for the same things in the White House and in the headquarters building of the Department of Justice. You care to comment on this?
I have pictures on my desk at the moment that shows club-swinging policemen in Philadelphia, in New York, in Rochester, and in Los Angeles. And there are no scenes nor no pictures to compare with these. And as I recall, they certainly broke up these lawless demonstrations, as they should have. And you always hear the cry police brutality in every state in the Union where a lawless element is caused to disperse. The cause for this and the necessity for breaking up a demonstration comes not from the police, but from those who march in defiance of local, city, state, and federal law and rulings.
Now, Governor Wallace, after a recent episode in Selma where police removed the demonstrators from a major transcontinental highway, there were so-called sympathy demonstrations staged in such places as New York, Chicago, and Los Angeles. Do you see this as part of a pattern to undermine confidence in law enforcement throughout the nation?
In fact, in every country in the world in which the communists have taken over, the first thing that they have done is to undermine people's confidence in the police. But I can say to you here now, if it were not for the fine police and law enforcement officials in every state in this union, it wouldn't be safe to ride in the streets, much less walk in them. And my hat is off to the police of this nation who are today carrying a great burden, a burden to the extent that it has damaged their health. In my own state here, we've had numbers of officers who have suffered heart attacks as a result of continuous duty against a lawless element of this sort. Although I would say that our instructions have always been, even in the dispersion of lawless elements, is to use the least amount of force necessary, because I don't like to see anyone get hurt, even if he's a lawbreaker.
As the Selma to Montgomery march was approaching, the Saturday before, March 6, Wallace held a press conference. And in archives from United Press International cite Wallace is saying, quote, he would not let Negroes march from Selma to Montgomery Sunday, but integration leaders said that if state police, quote, try to bully us, we'll have to stand our ground. He goes on to say there will be no march between Selma and Montgomery, and I have so instructed the Department of Public Safety. The governor, in that news conference, said that he had ordered Highway Patrol Chief Colonel Al Lingo to, quote, use whatever measures are necessary to prevent a march, close quote. So here we are on Sunday, March 7th, 1965. A 25-year-old John Lewis, head of the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, and the Reverend Hosea Williams of the Southern Christian Leadership Conference would lead this nonviolent protest, and they would be met by state troopers sent by Governor George Wallace.
They were beaten back with canes and clubs and whips and tear gas and nausea gas. The screams of the marchers and the thud of the clubs and hoofbeats were carried by television to an unbelieving America.
A week later, on March 14th, Governor Wallace appeared on Face the Nation and tried to justify actions of Alabama state troopers by comparing Alabama to other states.
Governor, you referred to Philadelphia and to New York as riots. You think that the situation that existed on this side of the Edmund Pettus Bridge on Sunday was a riot? The Negroes were standing in a line waiting and asking to have a word with your troopers, sir.
Mr. Benton, and I want to say again that my orders have always been to use a minimum amount of force. No force if necessary. For goodness sakes, don't let anybody get hurt. I've said that over and over and over. That's all.
Was the amount of force used last Sunday the minimum required?
Was it the minimum required? That matter at the present time, as a result of the charges of police brutality, is under investigation, but I'm not going to be stampeded or blackjacked, as Mr. Johnson said, into making any accusations against the police because some outside agitators themselves have accused us of police brutality. Because clubs were used on Pennsylvania Avenue the other day in clearing the street of people who lay down for 30 minutes. Now, when you say was the Selma situation the same, I want to again say that we don't want anybody to get hurt, and I'm just as remorseful about injuries to any American citizen as anyone.
Governor Wallace's view of what happened on March 7th was, of course, inaccurate.
And we got to the top of the bridge. We saw a sea of blue Alabama state troopers. And we continued to walk. We came within hearing distance of the state troopers. And a man identified himself and said, I'm Major John Cloud of the Alabama state troopers. This is an unlawful march and will not be allowed to continue. I give you 3 minutes to disperse and return to your church. And one of the young people walking with me, leading the march, a man by the name of Hosea Williams, who was on the staff of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., said, Major, give us a moment to kneel and pray. And the major said, troopers, advance. And you saw these guys putting on their gas masks. They came toward us, beating us with nightsticks and bullwhips, trampling us with horses. I was hit in the head by a state trooper with a nightstick. I had a concussion at the bridge. My legs went out from under me. I felt like I was going to die. I thought I saw death. All these many years later, I don't recall how I made it back across that bridge to the church. But after I got back to the church is full to capacity. More than 2,000 people outside trying to get in to protest what had happened on the bridge. And someone asked me to say something to the audience. And I stood up and said something like, I don't understand it. How President Johnson can send troops to Vietnam, but cannot send troops to Selma, Alabama, to protect people who only desire to register to vote.
That, of course, is Congressman John Lewis, decades later recalling the events of March 7th, 1965. Later, on March 25th of 1965, the march from Selma to Montgomery did indeed take place.
The long-anticipated Freedom March from Selma to Alabama's capital of Montgomery finally gets underway as Dr. Martin Luther King addresses the crowd at the starting point. Twice before, the marchers had been turned back by state troopers. Now they march under a federal court order and with the protection of federalized National Guard units and regular troops, a total of nearly 3,000 men. For the first day, there are 3,200 marchers in line. Half of the four-lane Highway 80 is closed to traffic. Later, where it becomes 2 lanes, the marchers had been ordered by the court to reduce their number to 300 a measure designed for their safety. There are a few isolated flare-ups between whites and Negroes, but otherwise the demonstration is peaceful. The first day, the marchers tramp a little over 7 miles. Those who have been assigned to complete the 54-mile walk hope to present a petition to Governor George Wallace. The first night is spent in a field near New Sister Springs Baptist Church, their host a Negro farmer. While 2,900 of the marchers return to Selma, the rest resume their long trek. Organizers hope their ranks will be swelled once again when the nucleus arrives in Montgomery. The Freedom March has been an historical venture in nonviolent protest.
And on that day, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. delivered the speech, "Our goal, our God, is marching on."
I know you're asking today, how long will it take? Somebody's asking, how long will prejudice blind the visions of men? I come to say to you this afternoon, however difficult the moment, yes, sir, however frustrating the hour, it will not be long, because truth crushed to earth will rise again. Yes, sir. How long? Not long. Yes, sir. Because no lie can live forever. Yes, sir. How long? Not long. How long? Because you shall reap what you sow. Yes, sir. How long? Not long. How long? Truth forever on the scaffold, wrong forever on the throne. Yes, that scaffold sways the future. Behind the dim unknown standeth God within the shadow, keeping watch above his own. How long? Not long. Because the arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends toward justice. How long? Not long. Not long. Because mine eyes have seen the glory of the coming of the Lord. He's trampling out the village where the grapes of wrath are stored. He's loosed the fateful lightning of his terrible swift sword. His truth is marching on. He has sounded forth the trumpet that shall never call retreat. He is sifting out the hearts of men before his judgment seat. Oh, be swift, my soul, to answer him. Be jubilant, my feet. Our God is marching on. Glory, hallelujah. Glory, hallelujah. Glory, hallelujah. Glory, hallelujah.
A history lesson? You're welcome. The Urban League of Greater Atlanta is leading a bus tour early Sunday morning, heading to Selma, Alabama, and the group will also participate in a march across the Edmund Pettus Bridge. According to the Urban League's website, the tickets have been sold out. This is Closer Look. I'm Rose Scott.
Like radio, like radio, like radio.
And this is HBCU 101, College Radio Edition.
89.9 ECSU, listener-supported public radio. We're WRVS-FM, Elizabeth City, North Carolina. Elizabeth City State University.
It's 5:05 and 68 degrees on the campus of Florida A&M University. I'm Veronica Lennon with WA&M News. 16 days after the inauguration of President George W. Bush, the recounts from the highly contested 2000 presidential election continue.
This is Chancellor Carrie Dixon. My go-to spot for jazz in the Triangle and beyond is right here at 90.7 FM WNCU Durham, a public service of North Carolina Central University.
There are just over 100 historically black colleges and universities in the United States, and a third of them have radio stations on campus, like WRVS at Elizabeth City State University.
Few stations seem to take their responsibility seriously. Well, here at 89.9, we take our obligation to create a better community to heart. We may not have all the answers, but you won't hear offensive music on our air. And the station policy, we just don't play music that disrespects our community.
Many of the radio stations at black colleges went on the air 50 years ago, just in time to chronicle important moments in black American history, like the first black man and woman to shuttle into outer space, the first black president, and the beating of Rodney King and the LA riots. Today, there's a massive effort underway to preserve and assess the audio collections at these HBCU radio stations and to help reformat collections to keep this history intact for generations to come. Jocelyn Robinson is the founder and director of the HBCU Radio Preservation Project, and she heads Radio Preservation and Archives at WYSO Public Radio in Yellow Springs, Ohio. Jocelyn, welcome to Due South.
Thanks for having me.
Well, you don't have to convince me. I love radio, and I remember growing up listening to the HBCU radio station at Florida A&M University with my daddy. We would listen to football games in the fall, like on Saturday afternoons. But what led you to preserving Black college radio, and what did you hope to find?
I am a producer as well as a preservationist. And when working with a collection at WYSO that was just filled with incredible Black voices, I became inspired to find out more about what might be held at HBCU radio stations. Prior to working as a producer, I was the Title III director at Central State University in Wilberforce, Ohio, the home of WCSU. And that was the sort of initial impetus for the journey that I went on in terms of finding out what HBCU radio might historically hold.
Now, this preservation project, did it get underway just like with a survey? You started with a survey, and now, there's a massive preservation effort underway. You took a visit to 4 HBCUs, I guess. So far, definitely Savannah State University, Fisk University, South Carolina State University, and Elizabeth City State University, that's right here in North Carolina. Well, were you surprised when you, set foot in those stations?
Well, during the survey phase, I had the opportunity to visit almost every campus with a radio station and just find out more about what collections they might have and what their needs were in terms of preserving those collections. So when we moved into the pilot phase, that's when we began working with the 4 schools that you mentioned. And so I had previously visited them and then was able to bring a team of folks to each campus to do preservation assessments, collections assessments. And we also spent a lot of time with training and really helping not just the radio stations, but the institutional archives on each campus provide the kind of preservation services to the radio stations that are right there on their campus. So it was really not so much a surprising thing, but more just a real universe of service that HBCU radio provides to the campuses and to the communities in which they reside. Just across the board, it was very clear that the radio stations are very important, not just to the universities themselves, but to the larger communities.
Definitely a way of communicating with the community, letting folks know what's going on when maybe you didn't get the daily newspaper, for example, and even before internet, right? You had to tune into the radio to find out what was going on. So when you visited Elizabeth City State University's radio station, WRVS, which I love that stands for Wonderful Radio Viking Style, right? That's what I read
Yes.
that it means. But, it started in 1986. I would have thought it was a little bit older, but it wasn't. But it's definitely accomplished a lot and then kind of transformed itself in several different ways, even its format over the years.
The Elizabeth City story is a wonderful story because WRVS was born really with the assistance and support of folks who came up and were trained up at WSHA at Shaw University in Raleigh. And
it's sad. I don't think that station is airing anymore, is it, in Shaw?
No, it is not. And I think that's one of the things that really points to some of the precarity and fragility HBCU radio, all radio at colleges. I think there is a niche there that often is overlooked on the campus, but certainly HBCU radio does have some precarity, as do many HBCUs. And with the situation at Shaw, the radio station's license was sold, and it was because of financial reasons. And that was in 2018, so it's really been fairly recent.
Well, what are some of the oldest radio stations at historically black colleges right now? And I wonder if they were kind of launched at the same time.
You know, I think they, just like HBCUs themselves, the radio stations are all different. And when they came on the air really varies. You know, I mentioned WCSU at Central State University. WCSU has the distinction of having the first FCC license that was granted to them in 1962. That said, Hampton University has had a radio station that's been on the air for many, many years. But, you know, with changes in regulations and the FCC and so forth, different regulations guided the development of radio. You know, radio is not that old. It's 100 years old, barely. And so some stations would have come on during that earlier time, but many of them came on during the Black Power movement.
Right.
So really shortly after the civil rights movement. For instance, WSHA came on board in 1968. And so, again, others much later. I believe that at North Carolina Central, the radio station didn't come on until into the mid-1990s. So it really varies.
And there are about 29 of these HBCU radio stations across the country right now.
Right now, what we're looking at primarily are those stations that have educational licenses and that are not broadcasting commercially. So, yeah, it's right now it stands at about 29. Now, there are a handful of stations that once existed that no longer do, and we hope to be able to do more with them. Of course, we've started that work with WSHA at Shaw University, but, you know, the University of the District of Columbia had a radio station, WDCU, that was on the air, and that license was sold. And in fact, in North Carolina, Fayetteville State also had a radio station that was broadcasting, and the station is now owned by the WUNC
That's
operation.
Right. Mm-hmm. We simulcast out of that radio station at Fayetteville State. Well, I'm here with Jocelyn Robinson, director and founder of the HBCU Radio Preservation Project. Now, this project has been awarded, I guess, $5 million from the Mellon Foundation to really tackle this preservation work. Tell me about everything that will go on, has gone on, because you said this, you know, it'll include training, preservation, but also a public history element.
That's right. So those three elements that we look to are training and education, preservation, and public history praxis. With our training and education, we are providing, again, resources to the radio stations and the institutional archives on campus in best practices, in digital preservation and audio preservation. We also have on the education side a year-long fellowship that a recent graduate, master's graduate, who's someone entering into the preservation field. We have an opportunity for them, and each year we have a different fellow in place. We also have a summer intern who is a current graduate student, and we really look to students who have their undergraduate work done at an HBCU to fill those ranks. Then with our preservation side, we are able to go to campuses, take a team to campus, and assist the institutional archivist and the radio station staff in finding and identifying and inventorying materials, and if the case determines it, then we'll also make sure that those materials are reformatted or digitized. And we work with the American Archive of Public Broadcasting to possibly make those materials accessible if that institution so chooses to do so. We present at conferences, including the Association of African American Museums and the Oral History Association. We have an oral history component to the project that is under our public history praxis pillar that in many cases, there's very little obsolete material, but there are still people who are affiliated with the station or who once were affiliated with the station who have wonderful stories of their experiences there. And so we're working to capture those stories. We have a podcast that's in production. We have a really awesome team of field archivists and oral historians, our fellow and intern, and other administrative folks that are really, all in as far as the project goes.
Well, that's great. It's really sounds like exciting work. Is definitely close to my heart. I wonder if we should shout out to folks right now, as they say, really to look for lost and found sound. If they've been associated with any of these radio stations across the country at these historically Black colleges and universities, because I hear you've been finding radio collections in boxes and closets and probably under beds of former announcers. It's important to find all this information, isn't it? We have to archive this, Jocelyn. It's very important.
One of my favorite stories affiliated with the project right now is that sort of shout out was made by Sharon Kay at WFSK at Fisk University, and a listener brought to her a tape from the spring of 1973 that was purported to be the first recording of a broadcast made at what was then called WRFN. Radio Free Nashville.
Wow.
And that is what morphed into WFSK at Fisk University.
Shout out again.
Yes, it was just an amazing tape to listen to. We all listened to it there, the offices at WFSK, and it was just incredibly inspiring. There was a local newscast, there was music programming, but students were there doing the announcing, reading the news, and it was just fabulous.
I know it was. Most of these HBCU radio stations, just like HBCUs, are located in the South. What can you tell me about the programming, I guess, at the stations, at the radio stations, whether when they started or now? I know several are jazz stations, and really the role they played in the community.
I would say that the jazz format does predominate, but many have rather eclectic formats. And, oftentimes first thing you're going to hear in the morning is gospel. Mm-hmm. And that will sometimes give way to jazz programming. And, there are so many different subgenres of jazz. So you're going to hear, straight ahead jazz, you're going to hear bebop, you're going to hear smooth, you're going to hear the whole spectrum. But as far as the service to the communities, there's public affairs programming on many of the stations that really speaks to the needs and the interests of members of the community, often to do with public health, finance, local political activities. They really are an opportunity for community members to be informed, and it really does provide a very needed and vital service, not just on, as I said, not just on campus, but to the larger communities.
And like a launch pad. When I think of it,
yeah.
When I think of the launch pad for future announcers that have gone to big things and politicians.
Oh, well, getting out the vote is also one of the things that HBCU stations have been really just invaluable too. So definitely in the political realm.
Well, Jocelyn Robinson, thank you so much for joining me. Jocelyn is the director of the HBCU Radio Preservation Project, and she heads radio preservation and archives at WYSO Public Radio in Yellow Springs, Ohio. Again, thanks for being here.
Oh, again, my pleasure.
You've been listening to HBCU 101, College Radio Edition on Due South. I'm Leonida Inge.
Distinguished guests, brothers and sisters, ladies and gentlemen, friends and enemies. I want to point out first that I'm very happy to be here this evening, and I'm thankful for the invitation to come here to Detroit this evening.
This Black History Month, we are continuing to highlight those in our community who are preserving our history and culture.
In the 8 Mile community, one Detroiter tells our Terrell Bailey that her love for the D runs deep despite some difficult parts of our history.
I'm compelled. I can't stop doing it if I wanted to. I say to myself a lot, oh, I'm tired. I don't want to do this no more. But I'm compelled. It's on my mind all the time to do something in my community.
Giving back to a community that's given so much to her, Teresa Moon is well known along 8 Mile in Detroit. She's been in the community for over 50 years and calls the area resilient. Across the street from Moon's home sits the Burwood Wall. The structure comes with a sorted past.
And the purpose of it was to divide two neighborhoods, the black neighborhood from a white neighborhood that was going to be developed. The United States government backed the wall being built to separate these two communities.
Now it's a constant reminder to Moon of how far African Americans have come, but still how far we have to go. It's a piece of Detroit's history, which is why the structure is on the National Register of Historic Places. Decades later, murals cover it. All the while, the wall is home to African Americans on each side.
You know what? When I was growing up, we just called it the wall. When I began to learn that people were interested in the history of this wall, I know it's called the Burwood Wall, the Wailing Wall, the Segregation Wall, but we always just called it the wall. That's all it was to us.
Moon says growing up, she remembers her community taking care of each other. It's one of the many reasons she pays it forward.
I started a bike program in the community because when I was a kid, everybody had a bike. And I had noticed that I don't see any kids around here riding bikes. And I got about 250 bikes donated to me over this period of time, fixed them and gave them all away. If you could just see the looks on some of the kids' faces, it was the best feeling. It just felt so good.
She's experienced a lot in the city. She recalled to us one experience as a teen that stuck with her forever, and it all involved her and a friend taking a joyride on their bikes.
Riding our bikes to Telegraph and 12 Mile and rode past a Dairy Queen, and there's a bunch of kids out there, white kids. And when we rode past, they called us like, wow.
Now she and others have a community organization to help the area, both old and young, move forward, while also teaching them where they came from.
Every year we have a community picnic, and at our community picnic we do have resources, you know, like people registering people to vote, housing. And when we started doing that, I was able to see, well, the group was able to see the deep need of providing, you know, for people who can't provide for themselves.
As the city evolves and continues to change, what doesn't change is Teresa Moon's love for Detroit.
8 Mile for life.
And her 8 Mile community.
We call the ground over here sacred ground.
Terrell Bailey, CBS News, Detroit.
I don't want us to lose sight that things are getting better. Each successive generation seems to be making progress in changing attitudes when it comes to race. Doesn't mean we're in a post-racial society. It doesn't mean that racism is eliminated. But you know, when I talk to Malia and Sasha, and I listen to their friends and I see them interact, they're better than we are. They're better than we were on these issues. And that's true in every community that I've visited all across the country.
Multiple investigations underway into alleged bullying at a local high school. Thanks for choosing NBC5 News at 5. I'm Craig Smullen. Both a third party and a school investigation are underway right now after a Phoenix high school cheerleader says she was bullied by her peers. NBC5's Emily Storm talked with both the family and the school. That's our top story at 5.
It feels amazing, honestly. You look over and there's little kids on the side and they're so excited to see a cheerleader, and it makes me feel like I'm doing my job right.
That was Phoenix high school cheerleader Sydney Waits last December.
Well, today is our first year of competition as well, so I feel like we're really setting ourselves up for the rest of the season.
Now, after her team's state cheerleading competition, Waits is not going back to school in person, and cheer practices have been paused.
I got a call at 1:24 in the morning from my daughter, hysterical with her coach in her room. And the coach said to me, you know, I'm devastated. I was devastated to find this white privilege card. For it to be left in her room is not coincidental.
Her mother, Ashley Parrott, and Sydney say last month while out of town in Oregon City for the competition, Sydney's bonnet was taken and a white privilege card was left in her room.
They came in to clean up my teammates' things, and they took the only thing I needed to keep my hair right for competition the next day.
It's something that she has to have to protect her hair. It's something that is required, and in a black community, it's very well understood.
Parrott says they've brought instances of racially motivated bullying to Phoenix High School over the past year.
There's a lot of racist things. People have written the N-word on multiple of my items.
Phoenix High School Principal Kaylin Cross says they have investigated past reports.
What was your awareness of the situation beforehand?
Anytime that students report anything to staff, we have a responsibility to investigate, and I'm confident to say that we have done that in each incident that's been reported to us.
Cross says they have initiated an investigation and a third-party investigation through PRISM Investigations.
It involves interviews with students, with family members, especially because it was an out-of-town situation, staff at the competition.
Because the investigation is ongoing, the information Cross can release is limited. Sydney plans to go to school online for the remainder of the school year, then switch schools.
I missed multiple quizzes and tests that are impacting my grades. And some of my teachers understand, but some of my teachers won't ever get it, I feel like.
In Phoenix, Emily Storm, NBC5 News.
Once the internal investigation is complete, Phoenix High School says it will wait for the results of the third-party investigation before moving forward.
I can feel it deep inside, this black nigger's pride. I have no fear when I say, and I say it every day, every nigger is a star. Every nigger is a star. Who will deny that you and I and every nigger is a star?
A middle school teacher under investigation in Elk Grove after handing out racist materials as part of a lesson they titled The History of the N-Word.
Your reporter, Madison Keevy, covering Sacramento County, was at the Elk Grove School District's board meeting with a strong reaction.
Parents with students that go here to Catherine Albiani Middle School shared their thoughts and feelings with district leadership over that racist handout. They say on that paper there's a warning that said it may be offensive to children, that parents pointed out is the very group it was intended for on this campus.
I do not love, however, is the way that individuals in this school district continue to treat black folks.
The N-word, the images, the stereotypes covering the bill were just crazy.
There's no possible way this can be framed as an educational endeavor.
Just some of the more than a dozen speakers who, in no uncertain terms, shared their concerns, frustrations, and questions about a middle school teacher's so-called history lesson.
My first reaction is this really can't be real life. Like, we're really handing out this sort of quote-unquote assignment to teach about the use of the N-word. It makes no sense.
This is the handout an unnamed teacher at Catherine L. Albiani Middle School gave students. We've blurred the N-word and offensive stereotypes depicted on the so-called dollar bill. The racist bucks printed on a sheet titled history of the N-word, and then given to students.
I was further upset by the letter we received, which contained nothing more than a feeble apology. Good Lord, okay. While I recognize that this matter is under investigation, I have to say unequivocally, the material referred to as racially offensive in the letter is without a doubt racist to its core.
A letter went out to families 24 hours ago, signed by the school's principal. In it, the district writes it does not condone the materials and is conducting a thorough investigation.
I'm exhausted. I love working for Elk Grove Unified School District. I wouldn't want to work anyplace else. But the way that I feel is that we need to be better.
Kathy Wilson works for the district and spoke to her peers about the handout, getting support from strangers at the meeting who agreed with her words.
The incident I reported on Thursday, February 27th, about the inbox is far bigger than me. It is a reflection of the systemic challenges that Black students, family, staff, and the broader community have faced for generations.
The district says resources will be available to students, staff, and families here at the middle school.
Tacky, trashy, terroristic. That is the interaction with Black people and white people every day, wherever they happen to be. It's going to be one of those categories, a combination of all three, before the day is over. But it doesn't get any better than tacky. I call it the 3 T's. Tacky, trashy, terroristic. That's it. Anywhere on the planet you are.
Once again, horrible racist language is plastered in bright orange letters for everyone to see. We blurred it here. Today, people who saw the M-word spray painted here tell us that they have no idea why this was the first word to come to the minds of the people who did this. Hello, I'm Russ McCaskey.
I'm Amanda Hall. It happened on Marco Island, right here on Butterfield Court, just north of Collier Boulevard. On the island, the people who did this also spray painted a mailbox and a porta potty. That vandalism doesn't compare to the N-word spray painted on the ground for all to see. Wink News anchor Taylor Wirtz joins us live on Marco. Taylor, do neighbors have any idea who would have done this?
Amanda, Russ, one neighbor actually got the whole thing on camera. They didn't want to share the video with us, but they said it shows 2 young boys walking with fishing poles onto this construction site you see behind me and spray painting everything, including that porta potty you see there, a deed that has left this community disturbed. For many, Marco Island is a place where the worries are few.
I never know of anything bad that happens here on Marco. It seems to be like the nicest place in the world to live.
But this weekend, neighbors on Butterfield Court woke up to a harsh reality check.
I noticed that my mailbox was spray painted, so I turned around and looked, and I could see that the property next door had spray paint all over it, and it had the N-word printed out very large on the ground, and the porta potty was all spray painted.
One neighbor, who did not want to be identified, said another neighbor's camera caught 2 young boys with fishing poles vandalizing the property, which is a construction site.
This came on his camera at 9:45 p.m. and they obviously found the spray cans on the property and decided that they would just be a little destructive for some reason.
She says what bothers her most isn't what the boys did, but why they felt the need to use a racial slur.
You know, my heart is a little sore, hurt that they would choose that word and that they would do that in a place where you're supposed to be enjoying life and having fun. And it makes me sad that a destructive thing like this would happen.
She hopes whoever did this will be caught and will learn a lesson from it.
I do hope that someone turns them in, because a lot of times kids today don't have repercussions for the things they do.
Now, that neighbor I spoke with did call Marco Island police and said they were out here investigating. Luckily, they moved some of the rocks around so that slur is not visible anymore. We did reach out to them for comment and are still waiting to hear back. On Marco Island, Taylor Wirtz, Wink News.
Less than a week ago, we had another vandalism incident in another community. We showed you these images at the Pine Lakes property in North Fort Myers. We've blurred out the more offensive words, but they mention Nazis, a homophobic slur, and anti-Semitic symbols. Staff estimates the damage to be more than $1,000. This is just the start of the harsh vandalism we've seen. In November last year, an FGCU professor's Cape Coral home was vandalized. Shattered glass, splattered paint everywhere, and hateful messages on the wall. 1 month after that, this video from Crime Stoppers shows a restaurant vandalism. The same month, drivers on Pine Island Road saw graffiti on the side of the old Golden Corral featuring a racial slur that we're not going to show. Back in March 2023, a man threw bricks and smashed a car in the parking lot at the Cape Coral Chabad Jewish Center. We're working with law enforcement to see if they think there's a vandalism and hate crime problem in Southwest Florida. If we get an answer, we'll let you know.
Now I really understand what they mean when they say white power. White, yeah. Come on. White, it's white
Tonight, some South Lubbock homeowners are still shocked about what was left in their driveways over the weekend.
Yeah, a Ziploc bag filled with corn kennels and a racist flyer with the name of a website called whitepower.org on the front of it.
Yeah, it appears to have come from the Aryan Freedom Network. The ADL says is an extremist neo-Nazi group based in Northeast Texas.
KLBK's Eddie Catano talked with one homeowner who got that bag and says that she's still pretty shaken up about it. Eddie?
That's right, Matt. Nova Lee Vasquez tells me she was just scrolling through Facebook when she saw a post shared of a bag like this one behind me was in the same neighborhood that she lives in. So what did she do? She went just to check out like anybody else would, and sure enough, she did see that.
I live on 113th Street, so I was like, let me go outside and look, see if it's there. When I went outside, I looked around, and it was in my driveway.
Nova Lee Vasquez says she picked up the Ziploc bag filled with dry corn and a flyer that reads Aryan Freedom Network.
It says distributed randomly without malicious intent. And then on the back, it says it's okay to be white.
Vasquez thought it might have been a prank, and so she did some research.
It's crazy that it's happening here in Midland and Dallas. So it's not just confined to one place, which if it was confined to one place, I would think maybe it was juveniles just pranking people, but 3 different places, it makes me think that it's more real than what we think.
Vasquez, who is Jewish, says it's even more concerning given the recent uptick America has seen in anti-Semitism.
It makes me feel pretty scared because my husband's Hispanic and I'm Jewish, and then I have a 2-month-old baby at home. So the fact that I got that, it's pretty scary.
This isn't the first time we've seen material like this on the South Plains. Nearly 5 years ago, a known white supremacist group known as Stormfront distributed similar propaganda in a Northeast Lubbock neighborhood. Vasquez says no matter who you are, the community should know that this is real and should not be taken lightly.
Things are brought up and people are angry about it and it's a huge thing, and then all of a sudden it just goes away. And I'm hoping that this isn't something that just people brush under the rug, because it needs to be brought to awareness. If people are getting this, even if it's not malicious and targeted towards people, it's spreading something that should not be spread.
Now, the Lubbock police tell us they are aware of this issue and state we as a department do not condone this, and it does not align with our values.
Pretty vile stuff, Eddie. Thank you very much.
What's this thing with Trump and you? It's like me and Letterman. What has he got against you here? I don't get it.
You know, this all dates back to when we were growing up together in Kenya.
Yeah.
And moving on, for our last story today, let's shift focus to East Africa. Kenya has ordered TikTok to remove sexual content that involves minors, following a report exposing child exploitation on the platform in the country. In a statement, the Communications Authority of Kenya directed TikTok to actively pull down all sexual content involving minors. It has also launched a formal inquiry into the allegations raised in a report published this week by the BBC. Kenyan regulators have asked TikTok to explain how offensive content continues to bypass its moderation mechanisms. While they have warned the platform it could face sanctions if found in violation of Kenyan laws. Now, the warning comes days after a BBC report revealed that the Chinese video sharing app profits from sexual live streams performed by Kenyan teenagers as young as 15. The report stated that while TikTok officially bans solicitation and exploitation, moderators on the platform admitted that the company is aware of such activities and takes a 70% cut from all live stream transactions. Now, Kenyan law criminalizes online child exploitation. Some key legal frameworks include the Films and Stage Plays Act of 1962, the Computer Misuse and Cybercrimes Act of 2018, and the Data Protection Act of 2019. However, despite these laws, regulators say gaps and loopholes continue to enable child exploitation online. To put this into context, TikTok, which has more than 1 billion active users worldwide, is the third most popular social media platform in Kenya after Facebook and WhatsApp. Other widely used apps include YouTube, Instagram, and X. Now, in 2023, the Kenyan government had directed TikTok to improve its content moderation. After meeting with President William Ruto in the same year, the TikTok CEO, Shou had agreed to monitor content more strictly. The Chinese platform had also agreed to establish a local office to coordinate operations in Kenya and had pledged to hire more Kenyans to work for the platform. Yet, despite that, Kenyan authorities have accused TikTok of failing to enforce its own policies effectively. But Kenya is not the only country scrutinizing TikTok. The Chinese company faces allegations and regulatory actions in several other nations as well. In the United States, TikTok faces allegations of espionage. In the European Union, it is under investigation over claims it was used by Russia to influence Romania's presidential elections. In Canada, the UK and Australia, TikTok is banned on government-issued devices. In India and Somalia, the platform is completely banned due to security and moral concerns. So, as the pressure mounts on TikTok worldwide, Kenya's latest warning on child exploitation adds to the global debate on whether the Chinese platform can adequately regulate its content. With authorities demanding greater accountability, it remains to be seen how social media giant will respond to these escalating concerns.
And some began to say the threats, or talk about the threats that were out. What would happen to me from some of our sick white brothers.
As Donald Trump defends his disruptive presidency in the U.S. Congress, in the state of Florida, a MAGA stronghold, a 67-year-old Indian origin nurse is battling for her life. The reason? Racism and hate crimes in the United States of America. The Indian origin woman, identified as Leelama Lal, was attacked by a 33-year-old psychiatric patient in a Florida hospital on the 25th of February. Lal, who dedicated herself caring for patients in an American hospital, was reportedly subjected to vitriolic racist abuse during the attack. The attack was so brutal that it left her face disfigured. While punching Lal in the face, the attacker, Stephen Scantlebury, said that Indians are bad. Hurling expletives, the attacker showed a disturbing intent to beat the nurse simply because of her Indian origin. Following the assault, Lal was rushed to a trauma center where she remains in critical care and risks permanently losing her eyesight. Lal's daughter, Cindy Joseph, said that she was taken aback by shock when she first saw her mother after the assault. Joseph said she could not recognize her mother. Both her eyes were swollen, along with multiple fractures throughout her face. The Indian origin nurse faces internal bleeding in the brain and will require several weeks of hospitalization to recover. Meanwhile, the alleged attacker, Stephen Scantlebury, was charged for hate crime and an attempted second-degree murder. In what could be a blow to the defense that the attacker was mentally challenged, a Florida court later denied the request to shift him to a mental health facility. Scantlebury currently remains behind bars as legal proceedings move forward. The shocking attack on Indian origin nurse has put the spotlight on the scourge of racism in the United States. Indian immigrants in the U.S. are seen as successful, educated and hardworking, but they also carry a heavy burden, the brutal reality of racism. A Pew Research report paints a stark picture. It states that 1 in every 2 Indians are shamed, racially profiled by their acquaintances and discriminated against. According to the 2023 study, 50% of Indian adults face racial discrimination in the U.S. 26% have been called offensive names by strangers. 3 in 10 have been told to go back to their home country. The Alam Alal's story is not just about one racist attack. It's a gut-wrenching reminder of the dark undercurrent of hate that still runs through America. A woman who spent her life healing others now fights to survive her own wounds. Lal is not the first victim of a violent hate crime. She most likely is not the last such victim either. How many more before change becomes inevitable?
Hitler had the supreme fascist state. And what was he worried about in Europe and in Germany? He was worried about white genetic annihilation. What is everybody in Europe worried about now? White genetic annihilation.
Some news from Germany, where a court has jailed 5 members of an extremist group. The extremists sentenced were accused of plotting to overthrow the government in a far-right coup and kidnap the health minister. The accused belonged to a self-styled group linked to the Reich Citizens Movement. The defendants included 4 men who were handed prison sentences between 5 years and 9 months and 8 years, while the 5th defendant, who is a woman, was given a prison sentence of 2 years and 10 months. The German prosecutors have also charged a 6th suspect in the case. The Koblenz Higher Regional Court found 2 accused guilty of weapons offences, while 1 other was guilty of planning a serious act of violence which could endanger the state. Their trial began in May of 2023 after the accused were arrested in the year 2022. The accused had violent plans for a coup and attacks on the electricity infrastructure. They were hoping to be joined by disgruntled members of the security forces, and they were planning to create conditions for civil war in Germany through violence and takeover of state power. Now, the trial in Koblenz is not the only one. Similar proceedings are underway in Frankfurt, Hamburg, and Munich, among others. These trials are targeting the wider far-right movement. Now, its members adhere to conspiracy theories and reject the legitimacy of the modern German state. The country's interior minister sounded an alarm over this major threat by the far-right group. She said that the probe into the terrorist group has now revealed an abyss. In recent federal elections, the far-right AfD surged to become the 2nd largest party in the Bundestag, winning 20.8% of the vote. This marked a historic shift in Germany's political landscape. Its leader, Alice Weidel, has managed to gain many takers for the party's strict immigration and nationalism-centric policies. However, its surge triggered a wave of anti-far-right protests across the country, with many associating the AfD's surge to a threat to democracy.
See, it used to be we could beat up minorities and nobody cared. It's the reason a lot of us joined the force. Hey, Mitch, you want to go down and arrest some homeless people but not be able to beat up any minorities? No, thank you. Yeah, no, I think we're good.
Antioch police scandal. Trial starts for 2 ex-officers accused of excessive force plot. Written by David Hernandez. This article is being read by an automated voice, generated by Everlit. A federal trial started Monday against 2 former Antioch police officers accused of conspiring to injure, threaten, and intimidate suspects from 2019 to 2022. Prosecutors allege Mortiza Amiri and Degan Winger used excessive force in 5 instances. Amiri's police dog bit suspects in 4 of the instances, and Degan Winger shot a suspect with a hard foam projectile, prosecutors said. Both Amiri and Winger pleaded not guilty in the case. During opening statements in Oakland federal court, Assistant U.S. Attorney Alexander Shepard showed the jury text messages Amiri and Winger exchanged, in which the pair touted uses of force. In one text sent in August 2020, Winger texted Amiri, "Let's get a dog bite 3 nights in a row." 3 hours later, Shepard said Amiri unleashed his dog on a suspect. Amiri sent Winger and other officers a photo of the dog bites the suspect suffered. Morty special. Winger replied, using an apparent nickname for Amiri, according to text messages Shepard showed. During their own opening statements, defense attorneys for Amiri and Winger said the uses of force were justified, and part of the job in a city plagued by crime and violence. The text messages were unprofessional, even grotesque, but they did not prove a conspiracy, the attorneys added. "It's a bunch of talking," Amiri's attorney, Paul Goyette, said in court, adding that the content of the messages was part of the department's culture. Winger's attorney, Nicole Lopes, described it as grotesque humor that the officers turned to as a way to deal with the stress and dangers of the job. Winger is accused of using excessive force in an instance in which he fired a 40mm launcher at a man suspected of stealing a car. Officers instructed the man to put his hands up, even as his hands were raised, Shepard said. Soon after Winger showed up, he asked for the launcher and stated, "I want to plug him," according to Shepard. As Smith stood with his hands up, Winger shot him, Shepard said. Lopes said a supervisor assigned Winger the launcher and told him, "Plug his ass, Winger." Other options like a taser or pepper spray were not options because of the distance between the man and the officers, Lopes said, adding that the man's hands were up only to his shoulders. Lopes stressed that the instance was also the first and last time Winger fired a 40mm launcher. Amiri and Winger were charged along with former officer Eric Rombo, who prosecutors said was also part of the conspiracy. Rombo, who as part of his duties was assigned a 40mm launcher, regularly shared photos of injuries he inflicted with the weapon, according to court records. He also collected and kept spent munitions, telling other officers he was creating a mantle and a trophy flag to commemorate the shootings, the documents say. Rombo took a plea deal in January and is set to testify against his former colleagues during the trial. The case was one of 4 filed against 10 former Antioch and Pittsburgh police officers in 2023 as a result of a 2-year investigation that rocked the departments amid revelations that some officers exchanged racist and homophobic messages. In August, Amiri was convicted of wire fraud and conspiracy to commit wire fraud in one of the other cases after prosecutors said he participated in a scheme in which he paid another officer's wife to obtain a college degree on his behalf to secure a pay bump. In another case, Winger was charged with distributing steroids to other officers. The case remains pending. Reach David Hernandez, david.hernandez at sfchronicle.com.
That if you want ultimate expression of white supremacy and the white supremacist mentality, and you want to put it in the form of one person that I would name, and that's something I very seldom do, it would be Jeffrey Dahmer. He's the ultimate expression of white supremacy. Everything that he was doing, working in a chocolate factory, the whole 9 yards. Storing black male bodies in canisters of lye and alcohol and whatnot, got them in the refrigerator, and cannibalism and all of that, and calm, very methodical. Even when questioned by the law enforcement officers, very calm. Hannibal Lecter.
Frozen femurs in the freezer. Jeffrey Dahmer.
Fighting for justice and for change, Sade Robinson died after a first date last April.
And through agony and grief, Robinson's mother has become an advocate. She is leading an effort at the state capitol to create a task force for missing and murdered black women and girls. Here's 12 News' Emily Pofall.
The 19-year-old woman disappeared on Monday
when 19-year-old Sade Robinson went missing out of Milwaukee last April.
The family of a missing Milwaukee woman joining the search today.
Her mother, Sheena Scarborough, put out a call for help.
If you know something, please say something.
For days, friends, family, and strangers searched Milwaukee County.
The leg was found in or near the water.
Investigators eventually linking Robinson to a severed leg found on the beach in Warnemont Park and charging Maxwell Anderson with murdering and dismembering her after a first date, April 1st.
Trauma, shock. I can't believe what's going on. This is a waking nightmare.
Robinson, known for her bubbly personality, a customer favorite at her jobs, Pizza Shuttle, and the Wisconsin Country Club, she was about to graduate MATC with a degree in criminal justice. Her mother revealing to 12 News she, too, was in school, working towards her master's in counseling at Concordia University. Now, grief has put everything on hold.
I am now in a position to where I need case management. I need support. I was once going to school to be a therapist. Now I do therapy. I'm grieving daily. Some days I don't want to move.
But what does keep her moving is her drive to keep other families from experiencing the same heartache. Scarborough joining state lawmakers LaTanya Johnson and Sheila Stubbs in calling for a statewide task force on missing and murdered African American women and girls. What was your role in that effort?
With what happened to Sade, I stand 10 toes behind them and getting this, pushed and whatever we need to do to make this happen.
A Columbia University study found that black women were 20 times more likely to be murdered in Wisconsin than white women. What in this task force would help change those odds?
I think finding out exactly why these women and girls are vulnerable, what in the background, what is the commonality in these cases that's the actual cause for making them so vulnerable. Finding that out, it's going to work wonders in making sure that we can actually safeguard and protect their lives.
Does the task force have the ability to create policy or change policy in any way?
It will give us the ability to advise. They will come up with the solutions. From those solutions, we will be able to introduce legislation that's geared toward preventing this.
Scarborough hopes the task force will help support victim families too.
Unfortunately, these situations get overlooked, and hopefully this brings greater visibility and we find out more answers.
The community early on critical of law enforcement after family did their own search and found Robinson's blanket ditched in a wooden area near 31st and Galena.
MPD returned to the area when Miss Robinson's family located her blanket. At this time, detectives located additional human remains.
This is definitely needed. It's urgent. It's a priority.
Scarborough trying to give back to the community that answered her call.
Sade is speaking to me, and she wants us to be able to help others.
By putting out a new one, this time to policymakers.
Listen to the stories of individuals like myself and what I've had to go through, and what many of the other individuals in the community have to go through with the waiting time, and how strongly this is needed.
And Emily is joining us here on set this evening. Emily, lawmakers Johnson and Stubbs actually tried to create this task force before, but that previous effort failed.
Right. It did not get a hearing on the Senate floor. This session, the pair is pushing for Attorney General Josh Call's office to create the task force. That is, if they can get the money set aside in the state budget to do so.
All right, Emily Pofall with an important follow-up to this tragic story. Good reporting.
If I had to wager, I would say it is not going to pass if they put this bill up again for a task force specifically focused on missing black females, children, so-called adults. I do not think it would be. In fact, I think they would DEI. Matter of fact, this time I should say it the way I've been saying it usually. I think they would DIE a bill right on out of Milwaukee. I don't think that's the state capital. Is Madison the state capital of Wisconsin? I think it's Madison. It's not Milwaukee. Anyway. Context of White Supremacy. Worthless Negro from Virginia, Gus T. Renegade. Can I pause for 2 seconds? I didn't include it because, how many reports can you play? Can't play everything. My alma mater, University of Virginia. What I just say? DIE. They had for like 30 seconds an office of diversity, inclusion, equity. They let Trump get in office for 3 days. Out of here. Trash. Out of here. Thomas Jefferson is gloating in his grave. My sick white brother, he said, hey, we get rid of all that slander about me and Sally Hemings saying I'm creeping out in the slave quarter. We get rid of all that. We be doing all right. I be feeling like a good white man. Miss you, brother TJ. Call him TJ. Today's date, Saturday, March 8, 2025. So I have been told. Spring forward. Okay. Now, white people have lots of science on this. Some of it is kind of old. White people say there's a lot of data that when you lose this hour, they move the clocks forward tonight, that many people across the time zone end up being in traffic accidents and having all sorts of mishaps because people are apparently very sensitive to missing the normal amount of sleep that they get, even just missing an hour. If you normally sleep 6 hours and now you get 5, you normally sleep 8, you get 7. People are very sensitive to that loss of sleep. And I think most people, myself included, many non-white people, we are sleep deprived as victims of white supremacy. And then many people, period, don't get enough rest in the system of white supremacy racism. So when you lose that hour, oh man, and in fact they say people are so sensitive to sleep loss and the impact is so bad, you even still see a slight increase in traffic accidents above what is normal even on Monday. It takes a few days for the impact of that time change to dissipate. So go to bed early. If you are on the East Coast, it is 9:25. So go to bed early. You should not be out gallivanting and such after the program concludes. I would say go to bed early, and then maybe even if you can, sleep a little later. See if you can do that for at least Sunday. Most folks got to be back on the plantation for Monday, but at least for Sunday, I would go to bed earlier. I would sleep later, and then I would try to go to bed a little bit earlier on Sunday night to see if you can offset that impact a little bit, and maybe even for the next few days. Maybe even take a nap when you get home from work on Monday, just to offset and make sure that you are feeling good. I mean, just a little power nap, 30 minutes, something like that, maybe. But be mindful of your sleep. I would say next week or so, this is not the time to, I'm going to stay up all night and all that. Go to bed. Try to get extra rest if you can. Let's see. Listener-supported counter-racist radio. Invest. If you think the program is constructive, hit the blog racism-notes.blogspot.com. racism-notes.blogspot.com. You'll see the PayPal button, top right corner. Huge gratitude and thanks to all of the investors throughout the known universe who have kept us on the air for 16 years. You can think of how many television programs have not been on the air for 16 seasons. 16. No interruptions through and through. Much obliged. Hopefully we have been worthy of your time and energy for all 16 and accurate more often than not throughout that 16 years. You can also hit the Amazon wish list. It is listed under Gus T. Renegade, linked at the blog. Enormous gratitude to all of the investors who've nabbed an item or 12 throughout the decade plus. We should be here at minimum on Thursday. We will thankfully wrap up Dr. Maya Angelou's A Song Flung Up to Heaven. I'm so that this is a short book. Thank goodness it is not 1 page longer. I can see why no one had read this book and it's not on anyone's shelf. I will only say again, from this point forward, I will look at Dr. Maya Angelou in a totally different light, as well as all of the folks who are big fans and all of that. Like, wow, just wow, and almost be at a point to dare somebody to say something to me about all this. Like, wee, I'm gonna behave like I had a swig of Mad Dog 2020. Like, woo. You want to talk about Maya, because I'm going to assume you haven't read her memoirs. Like, woo-wee, I'm going to be black and dangerous if you want to get down and cape for Maya Angelou. Like, oh my goodness, woo, back up off me. See, time is correct. It is correct. I would have been thrown out of the San Francisco library if I had read these memoirs and been in the Bay Area. They got the statue. They got a massive statue that was just erected. That, I mean, literally, like days before I got to San Francisco, they had the big ceremony and blah, 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 and whoa, still I rise, all that, blah, blah. Okay, they didn't put MD 2020 on the statue, but okay. They didn't put I'm black and I'm dangerous on the statue. They didn't put stay black and die on the statue. I would have acted a fool. I would have been thrown out of the library, and it would have messed up my Jonestown research, because I didn't go to San Francisco to cut a fool about Maya Angelou. I went to get information on Jonestown, and I did such a good job. I am still acquiring material from California, like A+, but I would have paused to cut because they were having ceremonies I would have paused to cut a fool, and I mean real talk, cut a fool. Man, people classified as black. Now you want to name the black males who married multiple white chicks. And you all think this is the coolest black dude ever who needs a statue to represent black people? I'm gonna wait. I would have cut a Mad Dog 2020 fool, and I would have bought a bottle of Mad Dog 2020 and posed it in front of that statue. That's why time is right, because they say, Gus, you savage, you coon, you ought to be ashamed of yourself. Ooh, that time is, I'll probably never get to go back to California, because they'll have a wildfire or earthquake all at the same time. It'll all drift off, and that'll be that. So, woo! Reading is more important than watching television. And it's not even just to be cruel. It's what I said before. It's not about venerating. We should be looking for errors. Why would white people, race soldiers, why would our homies put a statue up? Oh, you pick, she married how many white people? Mad Dog. Oh, okay, I got it. Bill Clinton, I got it. Minister Malcolm, her homie, said, when white people start giving out awards, rewards, prizes, and the battle continues, I get suspicious. They didn't put it's a lot of San Francisco legends that they could have put a statue up. I didn't even see a statue in the Bay Area for the mayor, black school superintendent, who was a victim of the zebra murders. I didn't see no statue for Dr. Marcus Foster. I didn't see no statue for all the Jonestown victims. Harvey Milk, he got a shout out. Mayor Moscone got a shout out. What about all those black children? Black people who got their property stolen by Jim Jones. They didn't get no statue. They didn't get no monument. My Mad Dog 2020. Dr. Angelou got a statue. I would have cut a fool. And then I'd have been fool enough to tie that to Jonestown. Phew. Real talk, I'd rather have a statue of Jim Jones out in front of the library, because that would give me particularly Give me a statue with Jim Jones with some black children. Priceless. That's because they got so much material inside, you could put, oh my God, they could, anyway, blah, 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 blah. Jonestown coming back soon. Go down there for no reason. Anyway, speaking of reading, say that again, Dr. Weldon, reading is more important than watching television. We had Dr. Wayne A. Wiegand as a guest on the program this past Sunday. Phenomenal book. I told you the book list from the 25 books I snagged last month at the library. Historic. Put that date on the calendar. That was the beginning of the list. I told you if I can get like half, maybe 40% of the authors and such from that list, banner year on the context of white supremacy. More to come. That book in particular about the history of white supremacy at U.S. public libraries is so detailed and important. Wow. One thing, well, we did a whole program so you can see what I thought was important by what we talked about. Black faces and, oh my God, it is staggering. But one thing, one lesson, major, massive takeaway from that book for me, and then talking with the author too. White people have invested so much time white people killed black people for reading. This is documented fact, and they did this for years. You learn how to read if you want to, act like you playing around with the alphabet, you're putting your life on the line. And then all of the labor, we're not going to give you books, you're not going to go to school. We've been Pitchfork, Ben Tillman, so many, J. Strom Thurmond, South Carolina, so many different generations of white people have fought and labored so hard. Shut down Department of Education. We talked about that with Dr. Wiegand. It's been so many different iterations and generations of this. You're not going to read. We're not going to let you in the public libraries. We're not going to put books in the Negro schools and all the rest of it. He has examples in the book. They fired white people for trying to put books in the Negro, just a few extra books in the Negro school. Even some white librarian committed suicide, allegedly, because she said, oh man, it's a shame the way we do the Negroes and don't let them read. Boy, they went there. What kind of nigger-loving librarian is you? Have you lost your nigger-loving mind? Can't be white, be ignorant about racism. Fuller told us why. You will get in trouble with other white folks, for sure. For sure. The race soldiers will let you know. Now, that book, one massive lesson for Gus T. I said when we read Bill Russell's autobiography, Second Wind, where he talked about his family in Louisiana, where they couldn't go to the library either. They mentioned Louisiana in Dr. Wiegand's book, In Silence or Indifference. I read that passage on the program where they said they had a plantation system, that's a direct quote, in Louisiana. Grab the wrong book if you want to. Act like you want to put, and I mean really, grab the wrong book might mean any book. Maybe you get a raggedy copy of the Bible. Maybe, and they said, HBCU, what's the first thing they said they play in the morning? Gospel. That's right. You better not act like you want to play some Dr. Welsing or old Amos Wilson. Crank that Amazing Grace up. One thing I learned, because Bill Russell, he said they could talk about the Haints when they were back in Louisiana. They couldn't talk about racism, certainly couldn't talk about no lynchings, but we could talk about the Haints. And I said, when we read Bill Russell's book, I said, wow, we are not really that far removed from the Haints at all 100 years later, if we have made any progress at all, really. When I read Dr. Wiegand's book, whew, I mean, he's got images and data in that book like 1960s, where you got places black people try to go to school and stuff and no books. Even that's some of so-called civil rights movement. You got the so-called white people that are not racist going down to the so-called South to bring books. Why? You can't go to no white library in Alabama. You can't go to the white library in Mississippi. You can't go to the white library in Texas. And then the Negro library, maybe they got one, maybe they don't. How many books they got there? 2. And those are old and raggedy. Being reminded and seeing some of that information for the first time, being reminded of the haints, wow. That is like light years to go from 1960, that being the case. You go to a library in a lot of places with black people, they got 2 books, no books, all the rest of it. They closed the schools for 5 years in Virginia, so you got all these illiterate black people and such. To go from 60 years from that to not even 60, 50 years from that to you have a counter-racist book club where everything is read with a leaning towards understanding white supremacy racism, and to read books from all over the world, some of them that weren't even originally published in English. That is staggering. Not because I'm at the helm, but how many other book clubs do you see that operate as such? That is staggering, and exactly the sort of thing that white people have worked so hard to prevent. You're not supposed to be reading at all, much less we're just going to read and read and read and read and read to better understand what it means to be white and the system of white supremacy racism. That is exactly what we are not supposed to do, and what white people have conditioned us not to do. It gave me a greater understanding. The book club has been poorly attended. We're not even supposed to be doing this. This is exactly what we are supposed to be doing to replace white supremacy with justice. Dr. Welsing told us this. Mr. Fuller even told us this from a bookstore. I have the audio, could pull it like right now, from a black bookstore that no longer exists. He didn't say read my book and stop. He said read all of these books. That has been the goal. Counter-Racist Book Club, Catherine Massey Book Club, 13 years at the cows. I said you could even set that. I said not even really though, because the book club has such a massive influence on the cat. That's why I ended up going to California, the book club. Even Buffalo, really now. That was Peyton Gendron and him shooting at the tops for sure. But if we had not read Absolute Madness, 22 caliber killer, it's kind of 50-50. 22 caliber killer really pushed that to going back to Buffalo this year. Tempered excitement. I am glad that it's earlier, but I cannot wait. Death sentence trial for Peyton Gendron. Are you serious? Front row every day. Let's get to it. Anyway, read, and read. Dr. Wiegand's book is spectacular. I forgot we had librarians in the Cows audience. If you are a librarian, you should read. It should be like mandatory. And I said on that program, books to request at the library. Oh my God. That one should be mandatory because that is about the history of U.S. public libraries. Like, that should be front center for every lot. Like, ew, the shame, look what we did. Ew. And white women, that's one now. White men for sure are in the book, including J. Strom Thurmond. But you know, or maybe you don't know because we don't read. We haven't been allowed at the libraries, a lot of us. But man, if you go to the library, that is the queendom of white women, racist woman. I run the book aisles, the book conservatory. Lots of white women in Dr. Wiegand's book. Talked about that on the broadcast. I will say quickly, though, J. Strom Thurmond is in Dr. Wiegand's work. He's in J. Russell Hawkins' book about same subject matter. The Bible told them so in South Carolina. That's a new book, too. South Carolina, where white people didn't want niggers to go to school, didn't want them to get books. J. Strom Thurmond right at the forefront of that. And I said in both of those books and throughout, people talk about J. Strom Thurmond, They will talk about his racism, and they will talk about he and other whites of that time period, mid-20th century, saying, oh man, the Negroes are going to rape our white daughters and white wives, and oh my goodness, stay away from the Negroes, the raping beast heathens. And then he's raping a white child. I brought this up with J. Russell Hawkins, white man, on the program. I brought this up with Dr. Wiegand this past Sunday. That, in my view, is a massive act of white supremacy racism, and it's the same. We are allies with J. Strom Thurmond. We are going to cover that up, that he raped this black child. And the hypocrisy of all, because both of those components are so central. That is such a massive component of white supremacy. That is Jeff Dahmer. What was Jeff Dahmer doing? Out there raping black children. Neely Fuller Jr., that's what this is all about. But they leave that out deliberately, because I asked both of them. J. Russell Hawkins, white man, white professor, did you know he was raping these black child? Yes. I asked Dr. Wiegand, did you know Strom Thurmond was raping this black child, produced a child with her? Yes. Why do you all leave this out? And they come with these lame excuses, and you can't include everything. Hey, man, that's a quick paragraph to point out, like I said, on both levels, the hypocrisy. You can't be running around and saying, hey, stay away from these raping Negroes, and you are the child rapist, Strom Thurmond. You are an accessory to a child rapist. You're covering it up, and they Epstein this all the time. They Jimmy Savile this all the time. Cover up for all these child rapists. They won't turn around and Diddy. Get out of here, man. Not that I'm caping for Diddy. Privileged black dude. But this sort of thing is consistent. Dr. Wiegand with the same thing. And it's also important because they will lie and say that this is about separation. We heard some of that in the reports this week. That's a lie. This is not about racism, white supremacy. When I say this is not about separation. This is about what's in the definition: subjugation and abuse. Long as we got power over to dominate you and mistreat you, that's what's, stay away. If it was about staying away from, we wouldn't have no problem. We'd still be on the continent or wherever. That's not what this is. You will not leave Negroes alone. Separate. Come on. Get your penis out of that little boy's rectum. If this is about separation, how about that? Anyway. And again, importantly, none of the white people, when I brought this up, none of them said, I didn't know that Strom Thurmond was raping them. I didn't. It wasn't ignorance. They knew. They knew. Anyway, let's see. Next, okay. Make sure I get to the sleep component. Or excuse me, not sleep component, the food component. Started off with a report on that at the very beginning of the news clips this week, and they said they were talking about giving your child to eat veggies. I do not have children. And they said in the report that if you go to work, they were talking about a mom, you go to work, you come home, you throw some broccoli in the oven or the microwave, and you get to your child, and you're being a super mom. I do not think you are being a super mom if you put anything in the microwave. You're not being a super dad, a super mom. 2 thumbs down, microwave for your child. And that is setting a horrible example for mealtime, in my opinion. But we have had about 2-3 generations of that. Lunchables and everything else that you can put in the microwave, so, you know, whatever. But I do not think that is being a super mom, even putting vegetables. In fact, I would submit that's probably why you have so many people who do not like vegetables. I am a proud vegan. 8 years, so long. Somebody asked me recently, and I had to count because it's not even, at this point, I don't even count them up anymore. Proud, 8 years vegan. If you threw some broccoli in the microwave and plopped it down in front of me, I would, what do you say? Sling it. I would do the same thing. I would do the same. You could pick any vegetable. You throw it in the microwave and put it in front of me, and I'm supposed to eat this and be happy about this? Are you out of your loony mind? Come on, man. You can do that. F's all around. Like, I have no idea how they conceptualize supermom or what that means at NPR, but 8 thumbs down from Gus T. As someone who does not have offspring but who has been around children in a living situation, and I mean like newborns and or very young children. 1, 2, having been around them, I can speak from experience about food and getting them to eat vegetables from what I think is much better than what you heard. You did get some good tips in there. The taste buds do change and continue to offer. That's great. You can do way better. Number one, as if we're going to do a kitchen appliance as opposed to the microwave, and I'm no fan of the microwave at all, as opposed to the microwave, a blender. And especially if you got a newborn, and I was stunned, they didn't even say anything about a blender. A blender. I have been around newborns when I began my love affair with smoothies. Oh my God. I'm going to tell you, number one, in fact, let me even rewind all that. Scratch all that. This is another one why that reporter got an F from me. The number one thing, and you have children, and we've talked about this before repeatedly. Hey, we had Judith Finlayson as a guest on the program. You are what your grandparents ate. Tremendous book, super informative. I made a compensatory investment request, and she sent me a vegan cookbook for the crock pot. Man, this made tons of recipes, pictures and everything. Anyway, but number one, most important, even before you conceive that child, what are you eating? Because if you are door dashing McDonald's, mozzarella sticks, Cheetos, fried chicken sandwiches, Popeye's chicken, potato chips, Haagen-Dazs, if that's what you eat all the time, hey, whatever. That's what your child, number one, their palate is already going to be. They talk about epigenetics. That's what you've been eating. That's what you've been eating during the 9 months that they're hanging out. Oh man, that's already what they're going to have a leaning towards anyway, because that's what you've been eating. And then the big one, once they get out, woohoo, I'm here. Okay, what are you eating? Because I'm going to tell you, and again, I don't have children, but I have been around children, and particularly where a living situation where you're around them enough, you are really close with the parents, so they, oh, okay, this is cool, blah, blah, blah. Man, when you eat, oh, it's time to eat. You eat, it's time to eat. And I don't care what you eat. You eat, it's time to eat. You got some, I want some. I want some. And try anybody out there that's got you, tell me I'm lying. You try and grab fork, spoon, sip of something and act like you're not going to share. Please. They don't even, please. Please, you don't even have to be direct mom or super dad, super mom. You can just be, we got enough of a rapport. Oh, Brother Gusty, you about to eat, you about to give me some? You going to have a smoothie? Give me some. You ain't going to just sit up and be stingy now. Come on now. That's the big one. That's the big one. You put that microwave broccoli down in front of them and then you go grab the Cheetos. Yeah, I'm slinging it. Come on now. Give up the Cheetos, man. Come on. So what you eat, they're going to eat. I do my smoothies. Guess what? Throw down a smoothie. I can make a lot of different smoothies. I can say when I've had 1-year-old, I do my big smoothie. I'm going to do my meal replacement smoothie. So I'm going to throw in mandatory zucchini. I'm going to throw in some carrots. Depends on which type of greens I have. If I have spinach, I'll use that. If I have kale, I'll use that. Boop, 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 boop. And I'm going to throw beets in. Love to get beets in my smoothie. Boop, 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 boop. Throw all that in. And then I add my fruits in, obviously. Non-dairy milk. Blend all that up. Bang. I have never had any of the little folks give them a little bit. I don't give them a big 8-ounce cup of it, but I'll give them, a few ounces of it. They wear a little bit. They'll drink some. Love it. Snuck those veggies in. They don't even know. And they will come back and ask. I've seen this. When it's smoothie time, it is smoothie time. You better give me some. Put some veggies in. There you go. And you can make all different types of smoothies. Slip in a few carrots. There you go. They won't even taste. You can slip in a little bit of cauliflower. They won't even know. Easy one. Super duper. Now, I can tell you, skip all that. What you eat, they're going to eat. Now, I have made curry. I like spicy foods. I put jalapenos and such in my food and use a variety of paprika and cayenne and, you know, all that. Love it, love it, love it. Spicy foods. I did not. I was making this for me, and since it's not my child, I was not thinking, oh, 1-year-old, you know, she might want a nibble or 3. You know, I was Gus T. I'm about to eat, get my curry on, brown rice. Woo, it's going to be great. And it was. But what I just say, hey, you eat. You ain't going to be stingy up in here, man. You get me a plate. Good day. So she's, and I'm thinking I did put the jalapeno, and I put ginger, and I love ginger, so good for you. I put ginger in, and I put ginger in my smoothies too, and they didn't come, no problem. Raw ginger, got a kick to it, no problem. They come back, drink more. So I'm thinking, I don't, you know, children are really sensitive, especially to heat things like temperature heat or spice heat. They're really sensitive. So I'm like, I don't know. It's got those jalapenos in it, and it's got ginger in it, and it's got cayenne in it, and I didn't make this for a child. So I'm going back, but you eat? You better give me some. So I cut out small pit. Now I'm nervous, but I put it down. Her mama's right there, like, you know, she wanted to pay for it. So I give it to her. She takes a bite of it, and she jumps back. Like, whoa, whoa, that is a little bit. Mama breastfeeds her, so she's, you know, it's normally not too spicy. She's, whoa. Taste it for a second. Eats all of it. I am stunned. And then she comes up. You eat, I eat. Now I'm vegan, so it's all veggies. It's curry, you know, broccoli, carrots, jalapeno, all veggies, and some rice in there too, but it's all veggies. You eat, I eat. This happened, repeat, you eat, I eat. Blueberries, I go get, because my smoothie. Love blueberries. That's not a vegetable, but still. Fruit. Most children, I think, will do fruits, but you eat. You don't have Cheetos here. I don't even know what Cheetos are. You don't have chicken tenders here. I don't know what chicken tenders are. Soup. I didn't have this recipe at the time, but I can tell you, that broccoli cheddar soup that I make, I put pictures of it up repeatedly. It is amazing. It is so easy to make. I guarantee children would eat that. It's really, and you could have young children. It's not something, because you steam the broccoli for this soup, so it's not like they raw and really hard and that sort of thing. It's cheese. It's not cheese, but it's cheesy. It's soup. Oh, they would love it. And you get in lots of broccoli, eat it up, you know, fresh, something you can make right there, have for next day stores, all that good stuff. But there's so many different ways that you can get vegetables into those carrot hot dogs that we had. That is a home run. I've had people that laugh and giggle because they're just accustomed to eating pork hot dogs and pork bacon and all that. Swine. Hey man, ease up all that. You don't want to go and see how did you get that hot dog. Go to the pork plant and see, go to North Carolina, and whoa, whoa, what is that smell? Yeah, hey, think about it, hey, them hot dogs, them wieners, Anyway, carrot hot dogs, you can get it much easier, super tasty. That's enough. Carrot hot dogs and that vegan broccoli soup, oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. Anyway, it's lots of different ways that you can get veggies. Like I said, I can even go through more of the, we made vegan pho. And this time, Black Mommy said, okay, Gus T, I would like to see if I can get little homie here to eat a little bit. They can be fussy sometimes, but I'd like at least attempt. No problem. This time, since I was alerted in advance and I was cooking, we will go easy on the jalapenos. We will crank the heat way down, and that way they can eat. And she did. And vegan pho, that is filled with vegetables. And white people also have data that says with young children, if you can expose them to a wide variety of foods early, they will be much more willing to try foods and such, especially as they go on. They'll be a lot more adventurous about food. I would also say try as best you can to avoid all those ultra processed foods and McDonald's, because all of that stuff that's got all that high fructose corn syrup and mega salt and sugar and all those additives and food coloring and what have you, that also is going to make them very prone to dislike vegetables and natural foods, because all of that is so unnatural and addictive. They talked about that, the addictive properties and sodas and Cheetos and McDonald's food and that sort of thing. So if you can try, and again now, keep saying what you eat, they're going to eat. And we talked about this before, that you are what your grandparents ate. They say that, like, hey, you really, if you're going to have offspring, take time to clean your diet up. Because that's number one. If you're eating nonsense all day long, it really doesn't matter. Your child is just going to eat what you eat, and, you know, end of story. Most of us don't eat a high quantity of veggies and such ourselves, so there you go. But I would really work, and that's another one with that television. I've said this before, television doesn't really advertise Brussels sprouts. You will see potato chips and a whole lot of bad food. McDonald's, I think you'll see that. Asparagus? Pistachio? I think they do have pistachio commercials. You might see some pistachios every now and then, but like beets? I do not see commercials. But kale, bok choy, you know I love some bok choy. I don't see no commercials for bok choy. Most of the commercials, especially the commercials that are aimed at children, they're for bad food, Lunchables and cookies and Chips Ahoy and McDonald's and all that old nonsense. Which, again, now you get all that and then go throw some broccoli in the microwave. No, I'm not going to eat that either. Anywhoodles, so much I could say about food. Get a blender. I can't say that enough. Get a blender. Get a blender. Get a blender. Let's see. They had the segment on Alabama, and this is 60 so-called anniversary, 60 years since Bloody Sunday in Alabama. I played that just because it seems lots of us, we do not study history, and this is not ancient history, but we are not very informed about these events. And I groused while reading Dr. Angelo's book, memoir. She has incorrect dates in the book. The Montgomery bus boycott, it started in 1955. That date is important for a lot of reasons. She says 1958. Like, she's not a historian, but I mean, you have editors. Dates, accuracy is important. Knowing this information, I said, for local history, if you are non-white, classified as black, you're born in Alabama, you got connections to Alabama, you should know those local events. Montgomery, you should know, yes, Dr. Angelou is incorrect. Montgomery bus boycott did start in 1955. Why is that important? You should know that information, local history. They had that movie, The Order, came out. That is local Seattle history. Gus T bragged about Seattle being the best plantation, been here so long. I should not be ignorant about the order. You just go on and on. If you have connections to Atlanta, you lived there, what have you, you should not be ignorant about the Atlanta child murders or the so-called Atlanta race riot, early part of the 20th century. You have connections to Buffalo. You should not be ignorant about the .22 caliber killings. Local history is very important. Heard that for Detroit too. You can involve your attempted family, offspring, after you eat that nutritious meal and get the veggies in. Go to the local library, study local history. That can be a great bonding, counter-racist experience for attempted family, attempted care mates, even a solo project. Siblings, all that. The segment in Alabama where they had to get in, because not all white people is racist. Reverend James Reeb, suspected racist, who died in Alabama during the Selma kerfuffle, and Viola Louiso, they said being described as a sexual degenerate. Viola Louiso, white woman suspected racist, who I believe came down to Alabama from Michigan, if my memory is correct. But she was giving transportation assistance to black people in Alabama who were involved in all of this, trying to respond to white supremacy racism, and she was killed. And they made all these comments saying that she was having sexual activity with all these black males, and oh my goodness, what a nigger-loving white whore, and blah blah blah. And her family was horrified because she was married to a white man. And she had children too. Her family was horrified, and blah blah blah. And I think the FBI had them under surveillance, her white family members and such, for like years. Like they have a documentary talking about all this. Even still, Viola Louiso, suspected racist, as well as her family. And even with the family, I would want to, you all live in Michigan. What part of Michigan do you live? Because Michigan, I mean, you got Detroit, you got Flint, you got Dearborn, you got a few locations with some niggers. But outside of that, like, woo, Michigan is heavily featured in James Lowen's sundown towns. You can't just, we don't allow niggers to just come here willy-nilly. So where do Viola Louiso's people live at, if they are indeed in Michigan? I might be incorrect about that. We'll double check and see. Let's see. For Alabama, because I've written about this before, the Edmund Pettus Bridge that they mentioned, that is deliberately named after a Klansman. I thought they kind of minimized that fact in the report. That bridge where Bloody Sunday happened is deliberately named after a Klansman, Edmund Pettus. It is still deliberately named after a Klansman. 21st century white people, let's take a vote. Maybe we should change the name. Maybe it's not cool to have this bridge, infamous historic site, named after a Klansman. Nah, let's keep it up. Which is exactly what I say. Don't change nothing. Keep everything as it is until we replace white supremacy with justice. Yes, it is that's what it's supposed to be. The Edmund Pettus Bridge. Who is he? Oh, that's the Klansman. Oh, okay. Proceed. And again, white people is not ignorant about racism. Then or now, everybody's aware. Edmund Pettus, Klansman. And that's why we put his name on the bridge. The HBCUs, how could I not play that report? We've been here for 16 years. The HBCU radios stations, they correctly said that the HBCU radio stations are fragile. White people are not fragile. That tackiness with suspected race soldier Robin DiAngelo, white people are not fragile. They just practice white supremacy racism. Victims of racism, like the HBCUs, they get looted. They don't even get all the money they're supposed to, where they maybe could have strong, vibrant radio stations that are near collapse. White people to blame for that too. Incidentally, man, I bet you they're going through and doing this archival process. I bet you there are probably some really good segments of Dr. Welsing and Mr. Fuller in those HBCU archives, because they both went to HBCUs and spoke so many times throughout a number of years. So it would just be a matter of, did they get recorded? But if they get that stuff like archived and everything, and they get the correct searchable tabs on it, I guarantee you Fuller and Dr. Welsing will pop up in those HBCU radio archives. Guaranteed. That would, wow, what an, and probably some other notable, recordings as well of individuals who made speeches and gave great contributions. Might even be Minister Malcolm X, Dr. King, Dick Gregory, probably a lot of other folks as well. But I'm sure Mr. Fuller, Dr. Welsing, probably Johnny Cochran too. Let's see. When they talked about TikTok and they said they had moral concerns about this Chinese social media company operating and luring all these young children, which white people don't care about children. And that's even, for me, further emphasized because they've had the exact same reports about Mark Zuckerberg's Meta. Why aren't they being banned? Because, it's been exactly the same. They don't have moral concerns about Meta and Facebook. Didn't they just grill them in front of Congress? I didn't hear anything about we're going to ban and shut them down. We're going to give you a certain amount of time to get your act cleaned up. I didn't hear none of that from Mark Zuckerberg and Meta. That's Stanford, Silicon Valley, too. I didn't hear none of that, though. He didn't go to Stanford, I'm just saying. Silicon Valley, that whole, Maybe I missed it. Maybe I didn't read correctly. Let's see. Germany, last two things I'll get, or three things I'll get, and then we'll check folks' commentary. Number one, let's go to Germany. Even though I'm a privileged black male, Gus T is pretty lame. I don't like traveling. As I said with California, it was a transformative travel experience. Absolutely. That said, it was stressful and difficult. That was really a long time to be gone to. Man, I would not exactly be jumping for joy like, hey, we're going to go do it again. And stay with her like, oh, God. Like, I hope, are the Dodgers going to be in the World Series? Can we not go to L.A.? Can we cut that part of it out maybe? I do not like traveling, but Buffalo, for sure. I mean, that was the whole reason to go the first time. Mandatory. That Peyton Gendron death sentence trial, let's start working on that this week, like making sure whatever I need, front row for press coverage, all of that, like, let's do it right now. But other than that, like, I'd be perfectly content to sit here in Seattle, do the counter-racist research. Hopefully we can solve this problem, not have to do any more moving around, because white people don't really make it easy to travel. And then you got to have real ID too. I got my passport, but still. All of that said, in the spirit of Dr. Francis Cress Welsing, somebody should go to Germany to see what is going on. Like, they had 5 white people arrested, attempted coup d'etat. What, they're going to kidnap one of the public officials? Like, what is going on? In the spirit of Dr. Francis Cress Welsing, that should be counter-racist study. Like, it is a global system. Is this white genetic annihilation? Take some time to brush up on our German. They got all kinds of apps and immediately translate and all the rest of it. We could take some German classes. Counter-racist field trip to Germany. I was even more sparked by this. They have a film festival in Germany at the end of the year. Battle for Laikipia is going to be there. I saw that film at the Seattle International Film Festival. That is one of the best documentaries that I saw, and it's all about white supremacy, racism. And I mean, it's no filter. It's white people and black people killing each other. And climate change. And, oh my, amazing. Easily one of the best. I think that was like the 3rd best film that I saw at the film. For a moment, that was the best film until I saw Soundtrack to Coup d'etat. That was the best film that I saw at the film festival last year, Battle for Laikipia, and it's going to be at the German Film Festival at the end of the year. If I was not a broke black person and it was not so difficult traveling, and if I wasn't going already like Buffalo. Oh yeah, let's go to Germany. We could do a twofer. We could see a great film and probably some other really good films too. And then what? AFD and all the rest of it. Any of y'all remember Dr. Welsing? Like, see if they have any newspaper articles about which he went over there to visit and blah, blah. Like, man, counter-racist study. Folks who have an easier time traveling, Germany, put that in the brain computer. Maybe somebody, I've got flyer miles to waste, Germany. Spirit of Dr. Welsing. Yes, spirit of Dr. Welsing. The segment on the Antioch enforcement, before I get to that, Stephen Scantlebury. He brutalized this non-white nurse, Leela Lal, Leelalal, in North Florida. They didn't include this in the audio segment, but when I was looking for more details, this is from WPBF 25, ABC News in Florida. And I'll just read a little bit. A chilling 911 call made the night before a Baker Act patient savagely beat a nurse at Palms West Hospital is raising new questions about his admission and security at the facility. WPBF 25 News has obtained exclusive audio of Stephen Scantlebury's 911 call in which he tells the operator he is feeling paranoid, a claim he confirmed by his wife's court testimony. And he goes on to talk about how he's hearing things and hangs up the phone during the midst of all of this. He goes to the hospital and they put him with this one non-white nurse, so-called Indian, and then he ends up crushing her face. She might lose her vision and all the rest of it. Horrific attack. But he was admitted under the Baker Act. And I was like, oh, man, we talked about this before. Caller at the courthouse and people in Florida being admitted under the Baker Act. It seems like a lot of times white people who, race soldiers who under some violent tendencies or whatever, and they get these Baker Acts, what have you, that work in their favor or no, it would seem like at minimum there should have been better security protections. Because they said this person had been doing kind of violent things prior to, running around and hopping on tables and all the rest of it. And somehow they got left with this tiny non-white female, and then he brutalizes her. But that would be another one I would think about in terms of if you are going to be working in a hospital, nurse, anything of the sort. These are the folks that you might have to be working with. And then he come out with some lame defense, say, oh, man, I was, schizophrenic. Oh, I wasn't in my right mind. I wasn't racist. I wasn't racist. No. Quickly, the Antioch police situation, I can only say, man, I had read a teaspoon about that before. And speaking of Antioch, for folks who are not aware, that's not just California. That is Bay Area, California. You can hop on the BART in Oakland or San Francisco and quickly get to Antioch or Pittsburgh where this happened. Easily, quickly. I was right there. In fact, I was right there. Anyway. I had read briefly about the dog part and what have you, and I guess it just slipped my mind, because I would have, for sure, the preface would have been about the dogs. I probably would have even got Snoop in there, but what in the white dog? They are bragging about putting dog. That's one where I said, I got to go and see the photos. Who did they put the dogs on up in Antioch? Got to brag. He sick the dog. How many reports have we done on this one? By the way, over and over, white people come on and said, oh, yeah, you're a white man. You get that canine unit. Oh, let Leroy act up. If you want to talk about that in St. Louis after Mike Brown Jr., be a black child in St. Louis and skip school if you want to. Maya Angelou was born there. He put dogs on her, too. That's in South Africa. We read about that. Patrice Lumumba. They put the dogs on you in the Congo. You're going to get down in that mine and get the call. You put the dogs on you in the Congo, too. South Africa. We put the dogs on you in South Africa, too. Reading. White dog. Read that one. Wazelchuk. That was her name. Dr. Wazelchuk. She was with us last summer. We talked about her report, but they do that all across the U.S. They get the dogs and they specifically put them, she said most of the time, they put the dogs on the privileged black male. That's why I said I got to see who are they putting the dogs on up in Antioch. And then when they don't use the dog, he said, plug his ass. Didn't I say yesterday, I said Eldridge Cleaver's soul on ice. He was ahead of his time talking about all that anti-sex and homoeroticism in the prison system. Plug his ass. Whose ass needed to be plugged in Antioch? Whose ass needed to be plugged? I told you for Black History Month, just put the plunger up. I don't need to hear nothing about no Kendrick Lamar or really no Maya Angelou poems, phenomenal. Put that plunger up. What plunger you said? The plunger for Abner Louima. Justin Volk. That's what we need for Black History Month. You put that next to Delectable Negro. Carter G. Woodson. That's somber, but yeah. There you go. Then we'll have a better understanding about, plug his ass. I've heard this before. This is not a shock to me. And in fact, it even kind of reminded me of what Fuller said. What is all this about Jeff Dahmer? Take the sex over. You can't even be a man or a woman and all that. Now, I don't know if this was a white man that he had to plug his ass, but I mean, hey, I have heard this many, many times before. Delectable Negro, human consumption, and homoeroticism in U.S. slave culture. Plug his, and then brag about it too. They said they got a mantle where we go and brag. You see how I did? You see how I plugged his ass on there? Look, dog took a chunk out his hind parts on that. See that? I said, that is Breaking Bad. They got the photos. He had a whole website to brag about the photos. I said, I got Patrice Lumumba's teeth in a jar. Look here. I got Claude Neal, got his testicles in a jar. That's Florida history too. That is white culture through and through and through. Remember, we had that white man on the program. He said, a white woman called and said, oh my goodness, I found a nigger's finger in granddad's attic. What I'm going to do with a mummified nigger finger? Why did granddad even have a mummified nigger finger? Oh, Lord. Now, how many of you all found a mummified white finger, white body part in your attic? Have you ever even heard of that? Number is 605-313-5164. The code 564943#. Press star 61 if you would like to participate. Anybody knows of black folks with mummified white body parts, albino? Maybe they got some albino magic, shoulders, ankle bones that they stocked up. Please let us know. Let's see. Retired firefighter in Florida. You have commentary. Should be with us. We'll nab other hands as we proceed.
Greetings, everyone. Greetings, Gus. I just have two reports. Hopefully, you didn't already go over them. I didn't hear it myself. Miami-Dade Fire Department responded to a house a few miles away from here, probably about a 10-minute drive away from here in Opelika, to an emergency of a black female, 52-year-old Toshiba Anderson was the patient, and they responded to the house and was treating her, and then all of a sudden they stopped what they were doing and went on a call. One report stated it was a house fire. Miss Anderson collapsed and died less than 2 hours later, her family said. It says here that her sister, Audrey Ben, was stating that her sister was saying, "Why won't they help me?" Also, Miss Anderson had a long stretch of stomach pain. She was in the hospital multiple times. 6 months earlier, she had undergone gastric bypass surgery. So it definitely was a qualified emergency. And that's something I shouldn't have to tell anybody that you do not do on a job as a firefighter, on a call, and then all of a sudden leave and go on another call. The system is equipped to whereas they know that you're already on an emergency call, you would not be included on that new call at all. They would respond if they needed a rescue unit on that call. On that other call, they would respond the next closest unit to that other call. So they definitely were not needed to go on that particular call. Even if it was next door, they would be called to go to that call. If it's something real close, like next door, being that they have 3 people on a rescue unit, they probably could send one person over there, but that definitely didn't qualify for what they did to Miss Anderson. My other report is something that I'm still real angry about. I pledged Omega Phi Phi back in 1977. Haven't been active in it since I left undergrad. by the time I went to grad school, which is right behind undergrad, I wasn't really into it at all. It was just something crazy to do at the time. But this report is about a 20-year-old Caleb Williams was murdered. I'm going to use that term instead of hazing. Hazing, it sounds too nice. Murdered, pledging this fraternity. He was a junior at Southern University, which I would think a lot of people know that that's a HBCU. His injury was due to, it's called the death was due to multiple punches to his chest. You know, a violent trauma to his chest, where from that point his heart probably stopped, that sort of thing. And they first lied about to law enforcement that they meaning the members of this organization from this particular hazing aspect that he was involved in. They lied and said that he was playing basketball. But eventually what it was some kind of probably was what they call going over. And from there, he was physically handled in a dastardly way, and he collapsed and died from the multiple punches to his chest. Young Mr. Caleb Wilson, he was a member of the famous marching band called the Human Jukebox. And most importantly, he played the trumpet. And most importantly, he was studying to be a mechanical engineer. I mean, I can talk about it for a long time, how angry that I am thinking about this death and what this young fellow could have been through life. And for something like what happened to him to take place is just, it's beyond tragic. It's beyond tragic on what took place with him. And yeah, that's my report. I'm gonna stop before I get more and more angry. Last but not least, on a lighter part, today, today's date, the quote-unquote fight of the century took place, which was between Muhammad Ali and Smoking Joe Frazier in New York's Madison Square Garden. It was, according to a lot of people, it was more than just a quote-unquote sporting event or a fight. It was political, and it would take too long to explain that. But anyway, that took place today. And that's all I have to say. Thanks for listening. Are we black proud?
Black culture. Let's say Dr. Angelou's book say Saturday night. Black and I'm dangerous. Man, that is, man, I do not have offspring, but yeah, that is, Fuller used to, when he would give his, black people need to stay away from each other, and that, right, what he talked about is black culture right there. When he used to talk about all of that, he would say, man, stay away from each other because we are dangerous. He would say that all the time. We are dangerous. That's in his whole segment on black culture. I've been playing it the past 30 days or so. I have been, man. And he would express the same sort of exasperation, frustration, just seeing life thrown away, black life in particular, just totally wasted, thrown away. That's somebody's child. All that effort to get into school. We need engineers, like, good gosh, they do all that complaining, and black people wasting their brain computer playing tackle football and video games and watching TV and all other kinds of nonsense. And hey, I'm in school. I'm not out here berating females and talking about trying to get some fentanyl. I'm trying to be an engineer. That's what we need. We'd had some better engineers, maybe Katrina wouldn't have happened. And this is how he is no longer. I mean, what? I can't even imagine. We heard Sade Robinson's mom, like, I cannot imagine, like, hazing? What? These are supposed to be, now again, now, hey. These are supposed to be your black brothers. Isn't that what they say? They say I didn't pledge and, all that stuff. But isn't that what they say? These are if you do the fraternities, the sororities for the females, they say, hey, these are my sorors, my sisters. You do the fraternity with the dudes. These are my brothers, the Q-Dogs. He said, we're talking Omega Psi. I think that's the Q. I didn't pledge, so I might be ignorant. But I think that's the Q-Dogs. These my Q-Dog brothers. Yeah, I go through. Yeah, my brothers then beat me to death. Wait a minute. And it can't be this happened. What is it about? Black History. I guess you put that up for Black History Month too. We heard FAMU. I think that was the Vipers, unfortunately, where this happened before with a member of the band, with one of the black brothers in the FAMU band.
Black brothers, like brother to hell.
Ended up dying. Beat up by his black brothers at school that he went to school with. Come on, man. Like, come on, man. And again, this is black culture. It's not all of it. I did see some black fraternities and sororities who took their spring break that's going on right now, at least in the U.S., to go do constructive things and help some of the victims of the hurricanes and all that. Phenomenal. But just like when they talked about the HBCU radio and they said, you get up and a lot of the stations, the first thing you hear in the morning, gospel. And then they play bebop and jazz and all that. Victims Guaranteed qualified. I'm not in charge of any radio station. They look at our 16 years of content and say, we see why not. My view, and based on what Dr. Welsing said, we don't need all that music, and I think it's kind of plantational to start the day with the gospel. Most black people I know, they do not wake up and start their day with Amazing Grace. Especially black people that I know that are 30 and under, they do not. Drake, maybe. Not Amazing Grace. Or bebop and jazz. All due respect, Dizzy Gillespie, Louis Armstrong, Billie Holiday. Most black people I know, 30 and under, 40 and under, they do not wake up and start their day with bebop. Why not? Hey, and we got so much in our vault. Why can't we wake up on HBCU radio, wake up and start our day with Dr. Welsing? Neely Fuller Jr., Dr. Marimba Ani, Malcolm X, HBCU grad, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Why can't we wake up and start our day with that? Correct focus. What is my life supposed to be about? What is my assignment on this planet? Not Amazing Grace. Bebop. Come on, let's be on our assignment. What are we here for? Not gyrating and dancing and hoping white Jesus will fix this. Let's be on our assignment. But the same thing in terms of just not being focused. Like, dang, that's why we joined this group, to beat on other black people? Beat them to death? Like, man. Woof. The report, just if folks want a tad bit more info, then we'll nab Irie, other callers. This is from The Advocate, which is a Louisiana publication. Caleb Williams, 20-year-old Southern University student, died last week after being punched in the chest during a fraternity hazing ritual in which about 10 fraternity members hit pledges with their fists and objects. What kind of objects? Do you get a nigger knocker? I know they got the paddle all the time. They got a big piece of wood. I come in, Ha, Leroy. I love you, Leroy. Ha, you my brother. You my black brother, Leroy. Ha. That's black culture. They beat him with the object, sources close to the criminal investigation into Wilson's death said Wednesday. The February 27th hazing incident took place at a warehouse off Greenwell Springs Road, according to multiple sources, not at a local park, as police said some of the fraternity members told them. One source said Wilson, a Kenner native and former junior engineering student, was not singled out, but he apparently experienced a medical episode as a result of being pledged. The source said 911 was never called, and there was a lapse in time between Wilson's medical episode and fraternity members bringing him to the hospital. I'm going to guess that that's probably... What? Caleb? What are we going to do? You think we going to get in trouble? Oh, man. Like, come on. That is so... And these are college students. These are college students. These are not, middle school, kindergarten. Like, are you... See, and this is another one. Now, sobriety would be best, because I'm going to wager some of this bad decision-making, young people under the influence. Hey, we've been reading about the Mad Dog 2020. We've been reading about them. Anyway, Smith is a member... Louisiana Secretary of State records show the warehouse is leased by Todd Smith, owner of California Hardwood Floors and East Baton Rouge. Metro Councilman Cleve Dunn Jr., owner of Runners Courier Service LLC. Smith is a member of Lambda Alpha Qs, according to the group's website, which is a graduate chapter of Omega Psi Phi, the fraternity under criminal investigation by local police and administrative probe by Southern University. He told local TV station WAFB that his son is a member of Omega Psi Phi. On February 27, Baton Rouge authorities said Wilson was brought to the hospital unconscious by people who found him that way at the North Sherwood Forest Park. Then Baton Rouge police officers were called to the hospital where Wilson was pronounced dead, authorities said that day, hours after the student died. The source said Wednesday the fraternity members were never at the park where they initially claimed the fraternity event happened. It's an ugly situation, the source said, adding that other pledges at the event were devastated by what happened to their brother. The source said the hazing ritual involved physical violence, not alcohol or drugs. The Baton Rouge Police Department has interviewed pledges who were there that night. I expect charges to come, the source said. The question is just who is going to be arrested and what the charges are going to be. I would still want a toxicology, which hopefully there will be since we got a murder. But really, I would have wanted a toxicology from everyone present, too. But certainly the victim, just to see nobody here under the influence. Everybody here was so, which in my view, so this was your sober, clear-minded decision-making. Worthy of great pity. And great might be an understatement. I can't say it enough, just because I do remember FAMU. They played it over and over and over. Band member death. That wasn't that long ago. That was 21st century. Obama was in the White House. This is black culture. The dozens, all the conflict with other black, even when it seems like we're cool and friends and home. I got to beat on you because I got to beat on you now. I got to beat you in your chest and grab a wrench and bust you upside the head because you're my black brother now. And they tell me I'm lame, and I say, hey, I don't hang out with black people. I stay with them. They say, man, brother, what's wrong with you, brother? Because you know, put that wrench down, and maybe we'll chat. Irie in Louisiana. Did you have in Louisiana? See, in Louisiana, did you have commentary, Irie?
How y'all doing? Okay. We were driving earlier. We had to go somewhere very early this morning, and I just put on a report about this. I was listening to it as I was driving. And it just made me so sad because my son is a year older. And I don't know, I'm trying not to get upset, but because a lot has happened today. I was calling about that, and then I was reminded of this report. You know, the life of a black male, especially a young one, you just don't know. You just don't know. I can't imagine how it feels to have lost a son. I know what it feels like to come real close, and it hurts a lot. And I hurt for those people because, like you said, they invested. They did something correct according to, I would think, Mr. Fuller's premise, according to the rules of white supremacy and, pay attention to school, go to school, graduate, be ahead of your class, be productive, get to college, and make something of yourself. And he got there and he died. He was murdered. What can you do? What can you do as a victim of racism on this planet? That I'm just flabbergasted. You know, I didn't. I'm disappointed, I have to say, with the so-called elders among us, victims of racism who are classified as black. I was severely dishonored or treated discourteously by my mom's landlord. My mother is disabled, and she's gonna be 70-something this year. So we're not talking about someone that is very well or very like middle age. And this lady knows that, and she did a haphazard job apparently patching things up before she rented this place, and my mom told her about some pests, and she don't want to fix it. And so today her and her husband were going to go over there and fix the oven or whatever. And I said, well, do you happen to have, check this out. I said, do you happen to have any ant spray? Because she saw me, she told me she saw a couple ants. She said, what? You ain't getting no ant spray. And we're getting quite tired of your mama, you hear me? I'm like, lady, who are you talking to? Because I've had a rough childhood. And because of my childhood, I'll forget an adult is an adult. You could be old, and I'm not trying to be funny or disrespectful, but I have trauma too. You know what I'm saying? So I was like, who's this lady talking to? Because she don't know. It could be a thing. But don't fight, right? Don't cuss, don't squabble. Okay. So I said, well, maybe we can get a can. But what she don't realize, lady, you signed up to be my mom's landlord under a federal housing regulation known as Section 8. You got to fix this stuff. And I feel so bad because, you know, my mom needs certain accommodations I can't give her. But then this lady's giving me an attitude, and then I found her husband said something very discourteous, to say the least, to my mom. And I'm like, you know what? This is how the chaos continues, because somebody in a weaker position than I, mentally, will go over there and have a fit. And then y'all gonna have a fit, and then it's a fit, and then here come the white people, and then somebody gonna be dead or go to jail, at the least go to jail. And then the person who needs housing is now homeless. And then that made me think of how they've done a very good job breaking up black families. You know what I'm saying? With Section 8. And, you know, it's like, and then going back to what you just said, Katrina, we didn't have these problems before Katrina. We just didn't. And it makes me upset. And we would do anything to be back where we was before. We really would. August 28th sounds like a real good day right about now. And it just hurts a lot. It really does. And I just don't know. We got to figure something out, because you can't go on like this. You just can't. You just can't. I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Mommies are important for sure. Very sorry to hear that about your mom. I guess with that component, we did do lots of work on Katrina. I will say that was one portion of the racism with Katrina. They did destroy, it's hard to even count, but massive quantities of public housing. After Katrina, they just raised it, and some of it was not damaged by the storm at all, or it was very, like, maybe a few windows got broken or something of that effect, but new windows, new paint job, would have been good to go. Gotta go. They raised lots of public housing, and that was a part of how you lost massive quantities of black people after Katrina in New Orleans specifically, because they shut down a lot of public schools, fired a lot of black teachers, and destroyed public housing, closed public hospital as well. Like Gary Rivlin, Katrina after the flood. We read the book in the book club, and he was a guest on the program, the rarest of the rare, double whammy constructive, where we read the book and had the author on the program. Very rare for that to happen. Anywho, with your mother's situation, I would say specifically, what she's talking about is a black landlord, and she's being discourteous to your mom, and then not honoring her responsibilities as the landlord to correct problems, ants, or whatever else it is. Once I see the person is not going to be professional, they're going to be discourteous, they're not going to follow through on what their obligations are, it would switch to a lot in writing, so you can have documentation of, these are the things, that problems that you would like addressed, all professional, dated, and everything else, but all of that would go to writing. Email, letters, if it has to be mailed, and you can get it certified and all that, but it would switch to in writing. And then if this is Section 8 or what have you, there are folks that you can report this to if they are not in compliance. If there's an ant problem and they're not responding in a correct manner, oh yeah, right, written report about that as well. Whatever else it is, if these are things that are not being done, if it's lights that I don't know what, if it's lighting or whatever other problems, I would just write, and I would go get the information in terms of, oh, okay, this is Section 8. If these things are not being done and they're violations, code violations, she has a boss, let's go make a written report. I went and attempted to resolve this matter and they ignored me, or I would even try and write down exactly what they said. Same type of thing that we talk about on neutralizing workplace racism and written reports. It may take some time, but even personally, I've had this when I've had issues, housing and such. Written documentation, it is, because in most cases you do have rights as a tenant, homeowner, whatever it is. You do have rights, and they are supposed to respond if there's a problem, plumbing issue, whatever, lighting issue. They are supposed to respond in a timely manner. So, and especially once they're surly and nasty, what Mr. Fuller said, no squabbling. And I would expect it, what we just heard. Caleb, I switched the report to Robert Champion because that's the victim from FAMU, November 2011. I didn't just want to keep referencing that incident, but it's Caleb Wilson, who is the victim who died down in Louisiana this year. But from way back in 2011, if you want to say way back, Robert Champion. And he was 26 years old. And the last 3 defendants prosecuted in the hazing death of Florida A&M drum major Robert Champion were convicted Friday of manslaughter and hazing with the result of death. A jury deliberated about 2.5 hours before returning guilty verdicts against Benjamin McNamee, 25, Aaron Golson, 22, and Daryl Kernell, 28. Now, their brain computer isn't even finished developing, and there you go. They will be sentenced June 26, according to Orange County, Florida online court records. Until then, they'll be held in the county jail. Champion, 26, died in November 2011 after a banned hazing ritual in which he was beaten aboard a school bus after a football game in Orlando, Florida. The initiation required pledges to run down the center of the bus while being punched, kicked, and assaulted by senior members, band members have said. and they ruled the death a homicide. He died within an hour of the beating. But I mean, that is black culture. That's not every single black person. That's not every single, HBCU club, band, sports experience. But I mean, black culture, we brag about being discourteous to each other. I've been saying this, the religion of name calling black people. Fuller just passed away. I said, hey, can we do 30 days of no name calling? You asking a lot, Brother Gus Coon. You asking a lot. Dang, we can't, because it's not like we could have name called white people for that 30 days for real. Like, nah, I got to name call. The coon is a coon, see. Black culture. So, that being the context, unfortunately, I would say you have to expect this. Even, housing situation, landlord, whatever. I do not expect courteous behavior from black people, really, under any circumstance. And so that's why I would switch to writing, making written reports, document, and then reporting to who her boss is about things not being handled correctly, code violations, things of that sort, and then escalate, because I have seen where, especially if it ends up being a lot of documentation of misdeeds or violations, oh yeah, eventually you can get the correct individual and they can help get these problems solved. For sure. And I would even include the discourteous behavior, because it's just no need for that. If you're just coming at ant spray, why is that something? You're not getting no ant spray. Get on out of here. No. Like, what is up? A no would have been fine, right? Sorry, man, we don't supply ant spray. Oh, okay. Now, I would have even, maybe had questions about that, but okay, no problem. But, and again, I humbly submit, and Fuller said the same thing, that is black culture. White people are most to blame, but that's black culture, being nasty and hostile with other people that are classified as black. Caleb Wilson. Anywho, the dozens, or we brag about this, type of a thing. Anywho, if you have any additional commentary, *61, don't wait till the last moment. You should get your hand up in the next 60 seconds or so. I did want to say real quick as well, we had folks who, Sade Robinson, that was it, Sade Robinson. Her mommy, Mrs. Scarborough, black female, she's getting that group, trying to get that bill that I talked about to get a task force in Kansas to find missing and murdered black females, and the white people say, we're not going to do that. That's President Obama, his white mother, she in Kansas, that's her folks. Sorry, that's in Wisconsin. Sorry, my bad, retract, not Kansas. This is in Wisconsin. Retract, Dahmerland. Proceed. Now, she's trying to get this. I have been talking about this case for years. She was killed, Sade Robinson, she was killed last, I think it was April. Since her mom is still talking, do you all think it would be constructive to speak with her mom? Because I've been saying for a year, I want to know, did they talk about Jeffrey Dahmer? Did they, watch the series, maybe read one of the books? Go through the old archives, about Jeffrey Dahmer and him preying on black people in Wisconsin, black children in Wisconsin. Did they talk about all that? In Milwaukee specifically, same town. That's been in the forefront of my brain computer for a year. Now, part of me feels like, Brother Gus, that is really ghoulish. She is suffering. She says she's still grieving, need therapy and everything else, and you want to talk to her black mom, you just heard Irie, black mom, all those concerns, and you just want to go talk to her. Hey, ma'am, look here, I know you had a tough time, and we miss Sade. We didn't even know her. We miss Sade. Look here, did y'all talk about, that is the most ghoulish thing in the world, and blah, blah, blah. But she is doing interviews. She's talked to a lot, well, I won't say a lot, but she's talked to a number of white people, right? Okay? At minimum, I'm a fellow victim. I am sincerely interested about this case. I have talked about missing and murdered black females before. I've written about this. We've had programs about this. I think it is. Do you all think it's important? Do you all think it's important? Or am I being ghoulish and just curiosity for no reason? I'm being like these white people who go out and spectate at Katrina or other scenes of black death and suffering. Is it worthwhile from a constructive standpoint, and even to offset a victim having to talk to lame, worthless Gus about all this? Is that constructive? Yay? Nay? You can let me know. Let's see. Other folks who dialed in. I don't know. Irie is back. did you have something else to add?
I did. I wanted to apologize because it just bubbled out. I mean, it just came out. I've had a rough day, and I had to do a lot of self-metering and reflection, and I do very much feel like a victim today. But I apologize because that crying just came out of me. I think it would be constructive. It's going to be ghoulish, grim, gory, no matter what, because of how she died, because of who she died by. You know what I'm saying? In Milwaukee, the infamous Milwaukee. But if, like Dr. King said, if it can help someone along the way, then Ms. Robinson's life will not be in vain. And I've been warning every young person I know about dating in general, but about white people, period. About white friends and white boyfriends and all that. So, I mean, it will have to be handled delicately, obviously, and all that, and I guess planned well, but I think you should, because there's something that needs to be heard over the airwaves about this, and the more publicity it gets, hopefully it'll add to the energy to get this man convicted of first-degree murder. I can't remember what he's charged with. Was it first-degree or something else? Or I'm sorry, I can't remember right now, but I pray that it adds to his carcass being stuck in a prison for the rest of his natural life. So I'm going to mute my line.
Much obliged. No apologies for being a victim of racism. Yeah, that's no apologies for that. I think Dr. Cambon said that from time to time you might have to cry a little bit, put your head down. It is a system of white supremacy racism, so I can definitely understand that, and for sure being an attempted parent, it can certainly be depressing from time to time. So no apologies there. We're just trying best as we can. Dr. Cambon said to not keep your head down too much so that we can look forward, solve this problem. And he is Maxwell Anderson, the white killer race soldier. He is facing first-degree intentional homicide, which I'm not sure if that's the same as first-degree murder, but first-degree intentional homicide, mutilating a corpse, and arson of property other than a building. Those are the charges that he's facing, and I think he's supposed to be going to trial later this year, I think. Oh, it's May. Yes, May. So that's very close. So we'll be able to look forward to this in a couple of months to see what happens. Hopefully they will throw the book at him. As they say, he can get maximum time. I don't know if they have the death penalty in Wisconsin, but New York, but maximum prosecution if he is convicted, which hopefully will be the case. But yeah, I'll have to process that. I think the attention thing too, because I've noted that it seems like a lot of people are not aware of this case, Sade Robinson, even though it's been almost a year since she was killed. This didn't get a lot of attention on a lot of mainstream outlets. So yes, to bring more attention, I think that would be good. And then, yeah, I don't know. I do think that it would be important. I mean, this happened in Milwaukee. They just had that Netflix series that everybody in the world watched. So, yeah. Anyway, anything else anybody needed to share?
Thanks for the show, Gus. Thanks for everything you're doing as best as I can give a thank you.
On our assignment, trying to solve the problem. We will be here on Thursday. Yes, we will be here Thursday. Neutralizing Workplace Racism. And then the book club on Friday, in case I misstated. Still getting myself reacclimated. Friday, Catherine Massey Book Club. Any hoodles. Last thing I'll make sure I get in. I had mentioned, or I played the report about the young lady cheerleader in Arizona where they were terrorizing her at school in Phoenix specifically, saying she was being bullied and such. Sydney Waits. There are so many of these cases. I just wanted to make sure that I pinpointed this. Sydney Waits, the cheerleader who was a victim of racism, she has one white parent one non-white parent. Talking about dangers of the dating, it continues. So you have lots of these cases where you have a Cindy Waits, non-white child, but she has a white parent. And that's the news article where they're discussing this out in Arizona. It's got her in her cheerleading outfit, Sydney Waits, teenager, but she's got her white mom with her. All of that confusion, they're terrorizing you at school and blah, 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 and I don't understand what's going on. And you're going to a white person to rescue and even help explain all this. They say she's doing homeschooling and all that and missed all these quizzes and everything. She's going to transfer schools next year. Okay, you can do all that. You are still a non-white person in a system of white supremacy, and you have a white mom. That, and I've said this too, I suspect in some instances that might be escalating some of these racist attacks against these children, because these little white race soldiers, they know, oh, you got, look at this, Octoroon, Malala Obama. By the time they're 13, 14, they know all that. They're experts on white supremacy, racism, these little racist children. So I suspect that's a part of it. And then you don't even get honesty from the white mom. They just pitch into it, much less the non-white parent if they're still there or whatever. But it's lots of these that you have to see the video. And for this one, there is video to be able to see, like, oh, this is cowbell. Tragic arrangement indeed. When you play around with sex, hey, the joke is on the offspring. Sobriety would be best. We need our brain computers for sure. No hazing. Creator, help me maximize my time and energy to replace white supremacy with justice immediately. Help me to stop wasting non-white people's time and energy, especially my own. Minimize contact, minimize conflict. Stop name calling people classified as black. Stop being discourteous to people classified as black. Stop gossiping. Stop producing throwaway offspring. It has been time. Replace white supremacy with justice immediately. Once again, move those clocks forward. I say go to bed early tonight, sleep in late on Sunday, and then go to bed early on Sunday as well. Compensate for missing out on that hour of rest. Cal signing out. Thanks all for tuning in. Guess we'll sign out in recognition. The late Caleb Wilson. And then, since we mentioned 2011, Robert Champion. Man, black culture, dangerous. Cal signing out. Thanks all for tuning in.
Nigga, you so brainwashed.
I'm a victim, brother.
Problem. You're a victim.
Man, I'm a victim of 400 years of conditioning.
Shut up.
The man has programmed my conditioning. Even my conditioning has been conditioned.